Chapter 10:17. At the foot of the heavenly Een mountain, the 6 great sects were in a chaotic battle. Endless Een led the Black Moon sect to beat the disciples of the other sects into a mess. All of you stop. All of you stop for me. Your sect masters are in my hands, put down your weapons and surrender. Otherwise, I'll kill them and then kill you all. Chu Tian set up a giant loudspeaker on the mountain and the rolling sound waves were like thunder. Father will do what he says, please don't test my patience. While he was speaking, Nangong Yun pushed the tied-up people into a row on the cliff. The sect leaders and elders of these mountain sects had all been captured. This was a destructive blow to the morale of the cultivators of the 5 spiritual mountains. The situation was already bad, and now that their sect masters had been captured, how could they still fight? Chu Tian shouted into the loudspeaker, "This matter is purely a plot by the Heavenly Sword sect. The Heavenly Sword sect is colluding with the Eagle Burial Kingdom. In order to obtain more benefits and resources, they are colluding with other races to wipe out all the large and small sects of the Great Zhou country. This kind of evil action is simply worthy of the Heavenly Sword sect's punishment." Nangong Yun hung up the corpses of the Eagle Burial Kingdom generals. "Open your dog eyes wide and look. These are the consecrators of the Eagle Burial Kingdom. We have already found enough tokens and evidence on them. These fellows are the Eagle Burial Kingdom's generals. The Heavenly Sword sect betrayed the Great Zhou country, so the Heavenly Sword sect is the true enemy." The crowd instantly fell into chaos. The 4 great sects looked at the Heavenly Sword sect with vigilant eyes. Nonsense. The Heavenly Sword sect has existed for tens of thousands of years and is the head of the Great Zhou country. How could they join the Eagle Burial Kingdom? The Heavenly Sword sect people instantly panicked. If Chu Tian's words were true, the Heavenly Sword sect would be enraged and these Heavenly Sword sect disciples would suffer a calamity. Chu Tian shouted into the loudspeaker, "Whether you believe it or not, the evidence is like a mountain. I'll say it again, we can forgive you if you stop in the nick of time, but we won't forgive you if you resist to the end. I'll give you 10 more seconds to put down your weapons, otherwise I'll kill your sect master and elder first before sending you to see your ancestors." Everyone looked at each other in blank dismay. Finally they all put down their weapons. Chu Tian let out a long sigh of relief. He had finally dealt with these fellows. He immediately ordered, "Endless Een, immediately tie them up. Treat the injured and give the poison the antidote. Don't let them die." The Black Moon sect's crisis was smoothly resolved like this. They had captured over 300,000 captives. The entire Black Moon sect watched over them, preventing these people from causing any trouble. Chu Tian didn't come to the Great Zhou country to start a war. He just liked the Great Zhou country's rich talent reserve, the Great Zhou country's good location, the Great Zhou country's rich resources, and the Great Zhou country's unexplored market. Chu Tian came to develop the Great Zhou country, so he didn't need to kill too much. He immediately told the company to prepare medicine and antidote, as well as enough food, saving the lives of these captives first. "Go in. Quickly go in. Fuck, hurry up for this old lady. Quickly kneel down." Nangong Yun pushed, kicked, and hammered, just like a beggar. She sent the 4 sect masters in front of Chu Tian. "Do you believe that I won't break your legs? How many times have I said it? Don't be so violent." Chu Tian seemed like a different person as he lectured them in a serious tone. "We are all civilized people, so we should use virtue to win people over. Do you understand?" Nangong Yun rolled her eyes. "I'm sorry, I didn't manage my subordinates well and made you suffer." Chu Tian waved his hand at the 4 of them. "Nangong, why aren't you bringing them tea?" Nangong Yun's eyes popped out. "Boss, did you make a mistake? You actually want me to apologize to them? It's already good enough that this old lady didn't castrate them." Yuan Zhenan's group of 4 were all famous people in Great Zhou. Nangong Yun's words made them feel cold. Chu Tian helplessly waved his hand. "All right, I have no intention of making it hard for you, so let's have an open discussion. I'm prepared to rebuild the Great Zhou royal family and push the Great Zhou princess Qin Bingyu onto the throne as the Great Zhou queen. As long as you are willing to support me, I can let you go and all grudges will be written off." "Who do you think you are?" Jean Kuei raised his head with a bloody nose. His eyes were red and his teeth were itching. What qualifications does an outsider have to care about the Great Zhou country's matters? You have guts, you're a man. Chu Tian narrowed his eyes as he spoke with a laugh, but he gave Nangong Yun a look. Nangong Yun charged forward and placed Jin Kuei on the ground. She raised her boot and kicked his crotch. This 2-meter-tall giant let out a bear-like howl. His body curled up as he painfully rolled around on the ground. Nangong Yun fiercely lifted him up and took out a short knife from her waist. This kick is just a lesson. If you don't give me face again, this old lady will cut off your 2 toys and put them in your mouth. Jin Kuei angrily roared, if you have the guts, then give me a quick death. The Black Tortoise sect can be killed but not humiliated. Alright. Nangong Yun angrily raised her knife and was about to attack. Nangong, stop, quickly stop. How could you forget what I said to you and ignore it? We civilized people have to convince people with virtue. Using force won't solve problems. Chu Tian stopped Nangong Yun. I respect unyielding heroes the most, so don't make it hard for this sect, Master Jin. Chu Tian's eyes fell onto the other people. What do you guys think? The Void Spirit Cave's Gu Lianshan calmly said, Little brat, there is no need to say so much. We are lucky to have the previous sect master's trust, allowing us to control the 10,000-year-old sect. If we give in, how will we face our ancestors? That's right. Medicine King Valley's Wang Tian Yun lightly said, if you think you can make us give in with threats, then you are looking down on us too much. The Divine Machine Hall's Yuan Jinan was filled with righteous indignation. If you want to kill us, then do as you please. They were all hard bones. This was a bit hard to deal with. Nangong Yun's eyebrows knit together as she prepared to explode. She didn't believe that if she taught these fellows a lesson, they would still be hard like this. Don't be nervous, don't misunderstand. Chu Tian stood up with a sincere smile on his face. You must have made a mistake. Did I say I wanted you to give in? No, there are still many things waiting for me in my territory. There are still large amounts of resources and land waiting to be conquered. Forgive me for saying this, but a place like Great Zhou, I don't put it in my eyes at all. Then what do you want? I just want to cooperate with you all. Chu Tian calmly explained without any threatening tone. Right now the Great Summer Country and the Warhounds Plains have a close relationship with Miracle Commerce, but the Great Summer Country and the Warhounds Plains are a bit weak. If the Great Zhou Country can join this alliance, we will have enough confidence and strength to expand into the surroundings, connecting to the nearby large and small kingdoms, finally forming a barrier to block the Eagle Burial Kingdom in the north. Whether you believe it or not, the Heavenly Sword sect colluding with the Eagle Burial Kingdom is an ironclad fact. Since the Eagle Burial Kingdom has already infiltrated Great Zhou several years ago, I think Great Zhou isn't far from war. The Eagle Burial Kingdom was a very strong country. In just a short 10-20 years, the Eagle Burial Kingdom had wildly expanded their territory, swallowing at least 20 large and small kingdoms, and they were still wildly expanding. The Great Zhou country was stronger than the surrounding kingdoms, so the Eagle Burial Kingdom did not easily bite this hard bone. However, everyone knew that the Eagle Burial Kingdom would invade Great Zhou sooner or later. The matter of the Heavenly Sword sect colluding with the Eagle Burial Kingdom had provoked everyone's nerves. As the leader of the Great Zhou country, the Eagle Burial Kingdom could even bribe the Heavenly Sword sect. Their intent to invade was clear, so pretending to be deaf and dumb wouldn't solve the problem. Chu Tian saw that everyone was deep in thought, so he immediately continued to say, the Great Zhou royal family was slaughtered by the Heavenly Sword sect in the past. Although you all participated, as long as you can help rebuild the Great Zhou royal family and help us deal with the Heavenly Sword sect, this matter will be written off. This is just your side of the story. Why should we help you? That's right, the Great Zhou people will take care of the Great Zhou country's matters. You want to interfere as an outsider and want to support a new power in Great Zhou. Do you not have any evil intentions? Nangong Yun couldn't help saying, you're simply refusing a toast only to drink a forfeit. It's normal for you to have doubts. The Black Moon sect's Yin Spirit was like this in the past. Do you know why she changed her mind in the end? Yin Spirit? She's just a baby that hasn't even grown up for a few years. What is she doing? She was just bewitched by you. That's not necessarily true. Chu Tian didn't have time to waste with them. Nangong, bring them to Miracle City and have a look at our Miracle City in a few days. If I return to the Heavenly Een Mountains in a few days and you still think that I don't have pure intentions of occupying the Great Zhou country, then let them go. I Chu Tian will not force anyone. Nangong Yun quickly said, if I go back, who will go find Big Sister Bing and the others? I don't know where they are right now. Let Vivian come over, it'll be easier for her to search with her spatial abilities. Alright, don't say any more, quickly go. Alright. Nangong Yun had no choice but to bring them to the transport tower. Chu Tian found Endless Yin to ask. From Endless Yin's description, Chen Bingyu and the others should have gone to a place called the Death Ice Field, in the Great Zhou country. The Death Ice Field was a place rarely visited by people. It was high above sea level and had a cold climate, with little life. It was said that the Chen family's ancestral land was there. Yoda's prophecy shouldn't be wrong. They hadn't returned for several days, so they might have encountered some trouble. But it didn't matter. Since they knew the general location, it shouldn't be hard to find them. Not long after Nangong Yun returned to Miracle City, Vivian was sent over to report. Big brother Chu Tian, you're finally willing to bring me out to do something. Chu Tian looked over Vivian and said in a surprised voice, your cultivation seems to have increased. That's right, I'm in the 5th true spirit layer. Vivian looked up with a bit of pride. Even if we meet strong bad people now, I can help Big Brother beat them. Chapter 10:18. The Divine Sense realm was split into many different levels. Hyperfocus was just a high degree of control. The Heart's Eye had the ability to observe with Divine Sense. The Heart's Lamp had the ability to interfere, and when one reached the Vision Domain realm, they would have the symbolic ability, Body Possession. Body Possession was not completely a spiritual control. It could also imbue one's own characteristics and abilities into the target with Divine Sense. Chu Tian had just used the Vision Domain realm's ability to send the Netherworld's power into Nangong Yun's body. Because of this, Nangong Yun's strength increased and she had a part of Chu Tian's abilities and cultivation technique. This was the power of the Vision Domain realm. In the strong warring kingdoms of the continent, it was easy to find spirit transformation cultivators, but it was hard to find a Vision Domain Divine Sense person. Even a strong warring kingdom might not have a single one. Therefore, even on the continent, being able to cultivate Divine Sense to this kind of realm was an extremely rare existence. Reaching the Vision Domain realm with a cultivation in the peak 3rd true spirit layer, this could be considered a shocking feat. Heavenly Sword Sect's people, open your eyes and look. This is the consecrator your sect master found. Nangong Yun revealed the identity of the mysterious consecrator and the Heavenly Sword Sect's disciples were stunned. Their morale naturally fell and under the combined attack of the 5 great sects, the Heavenly Sword Sect finally gave up resisting. The Heavenly Sword Sect's people all threw down their swords and surrendered. The sect was completely occupied. Nangong Yun followed Chu Tian's instructions and brought all the surrendered elders of the Heavenly Sword Sect in front of Chu Tian. Boss, I've brought them to you. Do you have any orders? All right, it's been hard on you. Chu Tian's eyes swept over these people and he didn't waste words. I want something from the Heavenly Sword Sect. As long as you obediently give it to me, I can guarantee that I won't make it hard for you and will instead guarantee that you won't have to worry about anything in the future. The Heavenly Sword Sect was already finished. What couldn't this fellow get if he wanted it? A Heavenly Sword Sect elder quickly asked, I wonder what the City Lord wants? The Heavenly Sword Sect has a long history of sword cultivation. There are several dozen first-rate inherited sword arts on the continent. We are willing to hand over the Heavenly Sword Sect's cultivation technique, as long as the City Lord is willing to let us go. Chu Tian's voice changed. I haven't finished yet. Actually, these sword arts are nothing. I am only very interested in your Heavenly Sword Sect's small phaseless sword. What? Small phaseless sword? This. The Heavenly Sword Sect elders looked at each other in blank dismay. Nangong Yun's eyebrows jumped up. It is your honor that my boss is interested. Since the boss has personally said it, Why haven't you taken out that sword yet? An elder said with a bitter smile, It's not that we don't want to take it out, but the small phaseless sword is an ultimate sword art created by the Heavenly Sword Sect's founder in the Sword Tomb for 30 years. It is the Heavenly Sword Sect's most important cultivation technique, and only the sect master has the qualifications to use it. We don't even know where the sword art is hidden. Bullshit. Nangong Yun angrily said, If you dare lie to us, I'll make you die miserably. Spare us. The elders all begged for mercy. We really don't know. Chu Tian knit his sword-like brows. It was rare to find an interesting cultivation technique. Were they going to miss it like this? Boss, you don't need to worry. Nangong Yun said to Chu Tian, This cultivation technique must be in the Heavenly Sword Sect. I'll bring a few thousand people to dig through the Heavenly Sword Mountain. I don't believe we can't find it. There's no need to be so troublesome. Chu Tian said to the elders, Where is the sword tomb that your sect's founder created? Bring me there to see it. This. Nangong Yun picked him up. I told you to hand over the cultivation technique and you're already hesitating. Now I want you to bring us to see some broken tomb and you're still so hesitant. I think you fellows are sincerely not cooperating, you're simply asking for a beating. How about I help you loosen your bones? No, it's a misunderstanding. The sword tomb is not a secret place, but the sword tomb has already been searched. The small phaseless sword art cannot be hidden in that kind of place. Is that so? Nangong Yun looked at Chu Tian. Then what do we do? Chu Tian calmly stood up. Since the Heavenly Sword Sect's founder could comprehend the small phaseless sword in the sword tomb, why can't I? Bring me to the sword tomb to see. This brat really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. When the Heavenly Sword Sect's founder lived, the great Zhou country hadn't appeared yet. This founder was called the Phaseless Sword Saint. Actually, before he created the small phaseless sword, he was already a super expert that shook the continent. Even so, the Phaseless Sword Saint used an entire 30 years. How old was this young man? Did he even have 30-50 years to comprehend? Nangong Yun and the others didn't care. How could these trivial mountain kings compare to Chu Tian? Since Chu Tian's debut, which miracle had he created was inferior to a trivial sword art? Stop talking, quickly lead the way. The Heavenly Sword Sect's elder had no choice but to open the sword tomb door. The Heavenly Sword Mountain sword tomb was a remnant of the ancient era and was actually hidden in the belly of the Heavenly Sword Mountain. Its size was not inferior to an underground palace, and there were millions of treasured swords inside, with each one being a rare treasure. This also showed how strong the ancient sword cultivator's inheritance was. At the very least, it wouldn't lose to the ancient sect that created the 10,000 corpse ancient tomb in the Yin Corpse Valley. Wah, there really are a lot of treasured swords. Nangong Yun and Meng Yinging followed Chu Tian into the sword tomb. The sword tomb was very large, but the structure wasn't very complex. There were millions of treasured swords inserted into the ground, forming an 8 trigrams array. It seemed like a powerful and ancient sword array, but it had been too long and most of the swords in the sword tomb had decayed, so it didn't have the aura of the past. Chu Tian walked across the bridge of the sword tomb. There were many long bridges like this in the sword tomb, with all kinds of swords inserted into the left and right. There was a dense forest of swords at the bottom of the bridge. The large ones were over 10 meters long and the small ones were only 1 or 2 feet long. There were all kinds of them and they were very rich. It could be called an exhibition of treasured swords. This is the Heavenly Sword Sect's sword tomb. A Heavenly Sword Sect disciple said in a trembling voice, Almost all of our Heavenly Sword Sect's cultivation techniques and treasured weapons were excavated from the sword tomb. After all these years, the sword tomb has already been excavated and it's hard to find anything valuable here. Nangong Yun looked at Chu Tian and said, Boss, you wouldn't be thinking of going into closed-door cultivation here, right? Closed-door cultivation? Of course not. Chu Tian wouldn't do this kind of thing. Chu Tian had personally experienced the might of the small phaseless sword, so he knew that this sword art was not something the Heavenly Sword Sect could create. Even if the founder was strong, he was still limited by the era and knowledge. Not to mention 30 years, even if he was given 100 years, he still wouldn't be able to create this kind of cultivation technique. You guys move a bit. Chu Tian closed his eyes and released his divine sense, instantly covering the entire sword tomb. Each sword trembled and a portion of the swords let out a clear ringing sound. All of these swords were soul-contracting weapons that could only be encountered. Because they felt Chu Tian's power, they took the initiative to acknowledge Chu Tian. As long as Chu Tian needed it, he could take any sword here. But Chu Tian wasn't looking for a weapon, so he wasn't interested in these swords. I got it. Chu Tian leapt into the air and jumped down from the sword bridge. His feet stepped on the densely packed sword hilts and he finally landed in the center area, in front of a giant broken sword that was hung by chains. The others chased after him, looking at Chu Tian with faces full of surprise. Meng Yingying asked, "What's so strange about this broken sword?" This was an incomparably huge broken sword, with countless iron chains shuttling through it. It stood upright in the center, and the body of the sword was already extremely rusted. This kind of broken sword was everywhere in the sword tomb. This one didn't seem to be much different. This is it. Chu Tian walked in front of the giant broken sword and placed his hand on it. When his divine sense was poured into it, the giant broken sword shook a few times, but there was no reaction. "That's not right," Meng Yingying said with a strange expression. "It's just a broken sword. Did you make a mistake?" Chu Tian would not make a mistake. There had to be something else in this broken sword, but how could he activate it? Nangong Yun said, "Even if there is something different about this sword, it has been in the sword tomb for so many years. Countless heavenly sword sect disciples, elders, and even the sect leader have observed it, but no one has been able to solve its secret. Just based on this point, it is not easy to solve." That's right. If it was easy to solve its secret, would it have been kept until today? Chu Tian pondered for a bit and then suddenly released his source spirit. The jet black demon god sword flew into the air and a destructive sword chi instantly covered the giant broken sword. The broken sword began to tremble even more violently. Suddenly, a few pieces of rust fell off. Meng Yingying's eyes lit up as she said, "There's a reaction." The rust on the broken sword continued to fall off and the thing hidden inside was revealed. It was a snow-white jade that looked like it was made of congealed fat. The surface was covered in dense and profound characters. It really was like this. Actually, solving the secret wasn't hard, as long as one had a strong enough sword source spirit. There weren't many people in the history of the Heavenly Sword sect that had this kind of source spirit. Perhaps the founder, the Phaseless Sword Saint, was one of them. Meng Yingying came over to look. She had learned quite a few characters over the past year, but when she saw the characters in front of her, she felt dizzy. She couldn't recognize a single character. What kind of characters are these? I've never seen them before. This is a high-level character of the ancient heaven race. Even I can only understand a part of it. Chu Tian carefully looked at it and said, "This should be a sword art cultivation technique. It's most likely the phaseless sword." It seems like the Heavenly Sword sect's founder creating this small phaseless sword is pure nonsense. Nangong Yun snorted. He clearly plagiarized it, but he said it was his own creation. He really doesn't care about face. You can't say it like that. He spent 30 years deciphering these characters. The essence of this sword art is a space-attributed sword art. However, a sword cultivator with a space attribute is very rare, so he simplified the sword art. Using the original version as the foundation, he created the small phaseless sword. Actually, the phaseless sword is much higher level than the small phaseless sword. Wouldn't the cultivation technique Chu Tian found be the original version? The characters are disappearing. Quickly record it down and let the young miss decipher it. Meng Yingying quickly took out her cell phone and took a few pictures. She couldn't find the so-called small phaseless sword, but she found the complete version of the phaseless sword. Once this sword art was completed, a person's battle strength would reach an unimaginable level. Other than the phaseless sword's jade disc, Chu Tian also took out the Heavenly Sword sect's high-level martial arts and took them all away. After all, the Heavenly Sword sect's sword arts were passed down from ancient times and had been refined by generations of geniuses, so there were still many good things to learn. Miracle commerce did not just need resources, these cultivation techniques and secret techniques were also very precious treasures. Chapter 10:19. Several dozen forest experts were left in the Heavenly Een Mountain. Endless Een had to quickly prepare to attack the Heavenly Sword Mountain because the Heavenly Sword Mountain was colluding with the Eagle Burial Kingdom. Now that things had gone wrong, if they didn't quickly take care of the Heavenly Sword sect, perhaps the Heavenly Sword sect would ally with the Eagle Burial Kingdom. If this matter developed to this point, it would be a very bad matter. Other than that, the great Zhou royal family's reconstruction meant that the benefits would be redistributed. Who would be willing to give up their own resources and territory? The best way was to use a justifiable reason to push away a large power. This way, they could take over all the territory and resources and the other powers could take advantage of it. This was a happy situation for everyone. Chu Tian could only do this much. The situation on Qin Bingyu's side was unclear, so she had no time to worry about it. Vivian had reached the 5th true spirit layer and her strength had increased by a large amount. Although the Great Zhou country was a bit larger than the Great Summer country, in front of Vivian's spatial ability, this bit of distance didn't matter at all. After several teleportations, the two of them arrived at the Death Ice Field. Wow, this place is so beautiful. This peak stood on high ground and the Earth's spiritual veins and resources were mainly ice attributed, therefore large amounts of ice elemental energy were gathered here, causing this area to be covered in ice and snow for tens of thousands of years. It was empty, silent, and cold. Looking from afar, the terrain was not flat. There were undulating mountains and snowy ridges, with no vegetation covering them at all. It was a unique snow scene. Vivian couldn't help shivering a few times. Strange, this place is too cold. It can actually affect me through my protective spirit energy. That's right, the ice elemental energy here is too rich. Chu Tian also felt the cold and he had to circulate his spirit energy to resist it. If my guesses aren't wrong, there is a rare ice vein at the bottom of the Death Ice Field that gathers a very strong ice elemental energy. This cold is not caused by normal temperatures, so it can directly affect a person's body. If one doesn't have a true spirit cultivation, perhaps their spirit energy will freeze in less than a day. They can't stay here at all, so it's called the Death Ice Field. Big Sister Bingyu andEen's spirit are here? Vivian said with a depressed expression. The ice field isn't small and the communication signal doesn't cover this area. How long will it take for us to find them? Did you forget? We have a tracking expert. A snow-white little fox came out and sat on his shoulder, proudly wagging its tail. Other than this fox, was there anyone else that could do this? Vivian suddenly realized that she had forgotten about the little fox again. Little fellow, we have many things to do, so don't waste time. Chu Tian patted the little fox's shoulder and said, the most important thing right now is to quickly find them. I'll properly reward you when we return. The little fox nodded in satisfaction. It closed its eyes to sense around before pointing in a direction with its claw. Vivian immediately placed a snow-white hand on Chu Tian's shoulder and the two of them jumped 100 miles. The Death Ice Field was not small and there would often be various snowstorms and death-cold currents. It would be very troublesome to travel on foot, but it was much more convenient with the spatial transferability. The Death Ice Field was large enough for normal people. But for Vivian, who could travel several hundred miles in an instant, it was too small. Under the little fox's guidance, Vivian used spatial movement several times before finally finding something. There was a very large ice lake to the north of the Death Ice Field. The entire lake was covered in blue ice, just like a smooth mirror on the ground. There was a blue energy flowing in the ice rain. This was the location of the eye of the ice vein. The energy aura on the surface of the ice lake was even stronger and even a true spirit cultivator couldn't resist it. That's the place we're looking for. Vivian found an ice castle in the center of the ice lake. It looked very old and waves of ice energy were being released from it. Look, isn't that Yoda? There was a green dragon coiled around the ice castle that was over 10 meters long. It had an awe-inspiring aura and was very spirited. Although most of its scales were covered in ice, there was still a strong pressure coming from its body. It couldn't be wrong. This was the green dragon that Yoda had transformed into. Vivian looked over it a few times. Prophet Yoda seems to be injured. Although the green dragon was awe-inspiring, its body was still injured, especially its neck. Large pieces of scales had disappeared and the flesh seemed like it had just recovered. There were at least several dozen injuries on its body. It was clear that it had experienced a bitter battle. "Let's go over." Chu Tian stopped Vivian. From Yoda's situation, they have clearly met a strong enemy. There's no need to rush out. Let's take a look at the situation first. After saying this, Chu Tian released the divine servants from the sealed scrolls and hid nearby to observe the situation. After a few hours, a group of people appeared on the ice field. There were over 20 of them and they were all spirit beasts. There were a few humans at the front and from their clothes, they should be high-level members of the Heavenly Sword sect. Vivian was instantly excited. Big Brother was right, their people are already here. Chu Tian made a shushing gesture. "Let's keep watching." "Old thing, do you really have to resist to the end?" A gray-haired sword cultivator wearing a crown stared coldly at the green dragon. 4 or 5 swords circled around him at high speed. He was not angry, but his aura was imposing. "You don't have much power left. Do you really want to throw your life away for this?" The green dragon gave a low roar with flames flashing in its throat. Its wings created a large amount of wind and snow as it released a sharp aura that swept out in all directions. Seeking death. The sword cultivator flew into the air and his hands formed sword fingers, small phaseless sword finger. The scales that had just grown on the green dragon's neck exploded again and large amounts of blood and flesh sprayed out. The green dragon ignored this as it flapped its wings to charge forward. The 2030 spirit beast experts all moved. They first used a barrier to protect the sword cultivator and then used various slowing, numbing, and all kinds of strange witchcraft techniques on the green dragon. Even if the green dragon's strength was very shocking, it was still very strenuous for it to fight against all of them. Chu Tian's brows tightly knit when he saw this. Small phaseless sword? It didn't need to be said to know that it was the Heavenly Sword sect Master Ling Wanjian. From the strength Ling Wanjian displayed, this person's cultivation had already reached the peak 5th true spirit layer and his small phaseless sword was a level higher than Ling Ying's. The spirit beast experts weren't simple. There were 4 in the 6th true spirit layer among the 20 people. Although the dragon's defense was very strong and it was hard for these people to break through, it was more than enough to restrain Yoda. Ling Wanjian's cultivation was not high, but the small phaseless sword was a very strong attack technique. Even if he was in the peak 5th true spirit layer, it was enough for him to pierce through the dragon's scales. Yoda had spent several days passively defending, so it was very strenuous for him now. Yoda was not a true green dragon. His dragon form was just a druid's secret technique. Therefore, to maintain his dragon form, he needed to spend quite a bit of energy at every moment. When the battle dragged on, he naturally began to lose strength. Vivian was very anxious. "Big Brother Chu Tian, let's make a move." "Calm down first," Chu Tian said in a low voice. "The small phaseless sword is very dangerous. Ling Wanjian's sword art has reached the large success realm, so it will be dangerous if we act rashly. Make your preparations first. As long as the time is right, we'll immediately attack." "Alright." The green dragon faced Ling Wanjian's increasingly fierce attacks and could no longer take the initiative, so the battle became more and more disadvantageous. The injuries on his body quickly increased. The green dragon was a dragon of life, so its recovery was very strong, but it couldn't keep up with this kind of damage. Of course. Ling Wanjian had consumed a lot of energy, but he could feel his advantage becoming more and more obvious. He became more and more confident, so he did not hold back at all and used all his strength to wildly attack. "I want to see how long you can keep this up." Small phaseless sword rain. Ling Wanjian's elemental energy frantically flowed out as his 10 fingers burst forth with power. This was a wave of sword finger attacks that used up most of Ling Wanjian's remaining strength. The green dragon gave a mournful cry and was sent flying with a bloody glow. All right. Now's the time. Vivian sent the 18 divine servants to Ling Wanjian. Suddenly, 18 figures appeared beside Ling Wanjian. They attacked Ling Wanjian at an extremely fast speed. Damn, there's an ambush. Ling Wanjian used his spirit energy to send several divine servants flying with a single sword finger. The spirit beast experts gave up on restraining the green dragon and flew into the air to block the remaining divine servants. When their attention was attracted, Vivian released her spatial energy again. Chu Tian appeared behind Ling Wanjian and stabbed out with all his strength. Ling Wanjian quickly sent out a sword chi in the air. Ding! It made Chu Tian feel the netherworld sword tremble. This strong strength almost sent the netherworld sword flying. You want to sneak attack me with this bit of strength? Ling Wanjian's face turned fierce as he roared, "Let's die together." Ling Wanjian condensed a sword chi, and when he was about to cut Chu Tian in half, he felt another spatial fluctuation appear beside him. There was actually someone else. Ling Wanjian tried to change the direction of the sword chi, but as soon as he moved, there was a spatial energy that fell on his body. It was like a sharp blade cutting him from head to toe. Vivian's attack, spatial slash. The timing of this attack was perfect. After Ling Wanjian released a large attack, he first forced back the divine servants and then forced back Chu Tian. He could not use the small phaseless sword, and Vivian's spatial attack had already been used before the teleportation array arrived. The fluctuations from Vivian's teleportation array covered up the spatial slash, so Ling Wanjian tried to force back Vivian. He did not know that a fatal attack had already arrived on his body. From head to toe, Ling Wanjian was directly cut in half. This top expert of the Great Zhou dynasty had died here for no apparent reason. Chu Tian said in a regretful voice, "You were too fast, you could have cut him in half and kept his life. It's such a pity that we couldn't obtain the small phaseless sword." Chu Tian was very interested in the Heavenly Sword sect's small phaseless sword. The sect master and vice sect master had all died, so it would be hard for him to obtain the sect's secret art. You're finally here. Chapter 1020. The Great Zhou country was long and narrow, like a snake. From north to south, it was several tens of thousands of miles, and in the middle section, there was a piece of land that protruded to the west. One of the most prosperous cities in the Great Zhou country, Cloud City, was located in this area. Cloud City had a population of over 8 million, and its location was very special, being located in a four-corner area. Cloud City was connected to the Warhound Plains to the east, the Great Summer Country to the south, and the northern countries to the north, so it was a place where merchants and adventurers gathered. This was the area that the Void Spirit Cave, the Medicine King Valley, and the Black Moon sect managed together, but now it had been ceded away and became the Great Zhou royal family's eastern capital. The Great Zhou country's 5 spiritual mountains supported the Great Zhou princess Qin Bingyu's kingship, becoming the new ruler of the Great Zhou country. She was mainly in charge of the secular world's economy as well as managing the various factions. The imperial city was still under construction, and it would take half a year to complete. Once the imperial city was completed, the Thousand East city would be in charge of the imperial city. The queen is ascending the throne. The queen is ascending the throne. The streets of Cloud City were empty. People ran out one after another and gathered outside the temporary imperial residence. The sect masters and elders of the 5 great spirit mountains were all present. Thousands of cultivators dressed in neat uniforms stood on both sides of the main road, bowing respectfully to the sect masters. There was already a sea of people all around because no Great Zhou citizen wanted to miss this historical moment. The Great Zhou royal family had just been rebuilt, so there were no soldiers, no servants, and no maids. The ceremony was very simple, but it did not affect the level of this coronation ceremony. From the sect masters to the elders, this scene was rarely seen in the Great Zhou country. Not to mention that they were all expressing their approval and support for the royal family. Although the Great Zhou royal family had just been rebuilt, their status had already surpassed 18 years ago. Chen Bingyu was wearing a crown and a royal robe. She was currently being supported by the two beauties Nangong Yun and Meng Yingying as she ascended the throne under the sound of drums and bells. The Black Moon sect offers 110,000-year-old black crystals to celebrate the great Zhou King ascending the throne. The Void Spirit Cave offers 1,000 thunder protection talismans to celebrate the great Zhou King ascending the throne. The Medicine King Valley offers 1,000 heaven spirit raising pills to celebrate the great Zhou King ascending the throne. The Black Tortoise sect offers 10,000 Black Tortoise warriors to serve the great Zhou King, to celebrate the great Zhou King ascending the throne. The Divine Machine Hall offers 100 diamond machine guards to guard the royal palace, to celebrate the great Zhou King ascending the throne. Now that even the 5 large sects were offering gifts, the small and medium-sized powers didn't dare be negligent. They all offered their most precious treasures to the newly established great Zhou royal family. Just from the gifts from these large and small great Zhou powers, the great Zhou King could build a treasure house. This was too shocking. The 5 large sects took the initiative to offer gifts to the newly established royal court. This was clearly taking the initiative to curry favor. The great Zhou's 6 great spiritual mountains had always been strong. When had something like this ever happened? Not long after everyone was shocked, 2 very special teams of emissaries suddenly appeared in the crowd. The northern militant King Luz has sent 10,000 good beasts to celebrate the new great Zhou King ascending the throne. The great summer King Dongfang Gan has sent 10,000 source energy weapons to celebrate the new great Zhou King ascending the throne. The great Zhou people all had strange expressions. Northern militant king? The great summer king? When did all of this appear? Why didn't people know about the appearance of such a country and its name? Chen Bingyu sat on the throne. She had long silver hair, a cold and elegant face, and a mature temperament, making her look like a high and mighty queen. She used a calm and dignified gaze to look over these people and nodded to Meng Yingying beside her. Meng Yingying cleared her throat and walked out. Her hands opened a royal proclamation and she began to read, the Great Zhou Royal Proclamation. Although the Great Zhou Royal Court has been rebuilt, there are still evil people inside and strong enemies outside. There are many tigers and wolves surrounding us. For the stability of the great Zhou country, this king has decided to exchange royal proclamations with the northern militant and great summer country to establish diplomatic relations. We will establish common prosperity and create a peaceful era. The 5 spiritual mountain sect masters cupped their hands. My king is wise. If the 5 sect masters were like this, how could the others have any objections? The 5 spiritual mountain disciples all bowed their heads. The small and medium sects and normal citizens all directly knelt on the ground. My king is wise. My king is wise. My king is wise. The northern militant King Luz and the great summer King Dongfang Gan walked onto the stage together. They began exchanging royal proclamations and signing a peace alliance contract. This meant that from now on the Great Zhou, Great Summer and Northern Militant Kingdoms would become one. Although they were independent, the barriers between them had been broken, forming a common prosperity circle. This kind of large matter had been accomplished. The eyes of the citizens of the 3 kingdoms were filled with disbelief. But the people who knew the inside story knew that the great Zhou King's ascension was just a play. Miracle City was the director and scriptwriter of this play, so they had already made large amounts of preparations. The great Zhou King was a high-level member of Miracle Commerce, the Northern Militant King was a member of Miracle City, and the Great Summer King had a deep relationship with Miracle Commerce. Basically, as long as Miracle City didn't fall, this triangle relationship wouldn't fall. Looking at the current situation, the Great Zhou country was far stronger than the Great Summer country and the Northern Militant country, but there wouldn't be any losers in this alliance. The strength of the 3 countries would increase. Not only could they resist the Northern Eagle Burial country's invasion, they could also use Miracle Commerce's technology to soar. The future would only become better and it wouldn't be worse than now. The Great Zhou country's ascension ceremony ended after a day. Luz had just established his power in the northern militant country, so he had to immediately return. Dong Fanggan couldn't stay in the Great Zhou country for long, so after discussing some details with Chen Bingyu, he returned to the Great Summer Country. We have to return to Miracle City. Big Sister Bing, you have to take care of yourself. In the Cloud City Palace, Meng Yinying and Nan Gongyun said their goodbyes to Chen Bingyu, both of them revealing regretful expressions. Chen Bingyu had become the Great Zhou country's empress, and there were many things she needed to take care of in the Great Zhou country, so she couldn't return to Miracle City to live with everyone for a while. Chen Bingyu's cold face revealed a trace of disappointment. Go back and tell Chu Tian that I will manage the 3 kingdoms, so he can be assured. That idiot Chu Tian is also too much. Meng Yinying complained. He went back and found elder sister to translate the cultivation technique, not meeting anyone before going into closed-door cultivation. He didn't even come to take a look at such a big matter in the Great Zhou country. Nan Gongyun was also a bit indignant. That's right, Big Sister Bing wants to stay in the Great Zhou country alone and the boss doesn't come to visit. This is a bit unfair. Chen Bingyu revealed a smile like the spring sun melting snow. Don't exaggerate it like this, it isn't hard to see him now. You don't need to worry about me, you should go back earlier. Big Sister Bing can be assured. I'll go back and give Elder Sister an application to have the company build a second transport tower in the Great Zhou country. It'll be built in the Imperial City's Royal Palace. This way we can see each other every day. Chen Bingyu's heart slightly moved. The Great Zhou country already had a transport tower and it cost quite a bit to build, so there shouldn't be a second one built in the short term. But if Meng Yinying personally applied, Meng Qingwu might be able to approve it. If the Great Zhou Royal Palace had a transport tower, what was the difference between Chen Bingyu living in the Royal Palace and Miracle City? Chen Bingyu had no interest in the Great Zhou King. But this was related to Miracle Commerce's important strategy, so she had to sit on the throne. Forest of Chaos, Miracle City. Meng Qingwu and Dolores were handling various matters, while Zero and several smart brains were busy managing the city. After Zero collected the data, he reported to Meng Qingwu, Sir Vice City Lord, this merging of the Great Zhou country is very important to Miracle City's development. The first batch of talents includes mechanical masters, alchemists, talisman masters, and array masters, with a total of around 50,000 people. There are 2 special talents with spatial innate talents and 16 spiritual innate talents. Meng Qingwu revealed a rare satisfied smile. This was one of the meanings of conquering the Great Zhou country. Miracle Commerce did not just want to create a regional alliance, making this regional alliance the cornerstone of Miracle Commerce's domination of the continent. It also wanted to occupy the relevant resources and absorb the relevant talents, increasing Miracle Commerce's background. With enough resources and talents, what couldn't they do? Chu Tian wanted to make battleships? Of course there was no problem. Chu Tian wanted to make the spiritual internet? Of course there was no problem. Because Miracle Commerce was becoming stronger and stronger, they already had these conditions. There's no such thing as too many talents, we'll take as many as we have. On the other hand, we need to have a strict audit system and technology security system. Meng Qingwu quickly ordered. Zero, according to the company's situation and the needs of the various departments, send them to me. Yes, Vice City Lord. Zero turned silent after saying this and began to calculate. After all, this was not a small task. Miracle Commerce's current scale was too big, so he needed to do a large amount of calculations to make the best plan for the company. Smart Brain was too easy to use. Meng Qingwu was most satisfied with Miracle Commerce's Smart Brain. This was truly a great invention that could create a new era. Although Miracle Commerce had reached a technical bottleneck and the computing speed of the matrices could not increase, the size of the matrices began to shrink and the production speed of Smart Brain began to increase. Meng Qingwu had already completed the basic layout of Smart Brain. From the citizens' identity information, daily service management, to the city's financial and bank financial management, as well as the shopping center, communication, and the spiritual network, everything was now under Meng Qingwu's arrangements. There was now a complete Smart Brain control system. Other than that, the cooperation between the Elven King and Miracle City had deepened and the transport towers had already been built. These transport towers and space warehouses were now managed by Smart Brain. Meng Qingwu had a strict identity verification and security system, and now with the intelligent management of Smart Brain, all of this was being monitored by Miracle Commerce. All risks would be reduced to a minimum. An intelligent city was being born in the depths of the forest. An inconceivable era was quickly awakening. Meng Qingwu walked in front of the window. When she saw the flourishing city, it was hard for her to suppress the pride in her heart. She had used all her intelligence and schemes on the most optimal construction. As for what the future would look like, it was not something Meng Qingwu could imagine. In short, it had to be heaven. Chapter 1021. After Ling Wanjian was taken care of, the other eagle burial experts weren't a problem. With the 18 divine servants and Vivian working together, they were quickly taken care of. Yoda, are you all right? Chu Tian put away his sword and walked over. Yoda had returned to his small and thin appearance. The green dragon's injuries didn't directly affect his body, but it still injured Yoda's vitality. However, with Chu Tian's methods and Miracle City's power, this bit of injury didn't count for anything. What about the others? The people we brought from Miracle City have all died in battle. Yoda's expression was very serious. Yin's spirit is currently heavily injured and Chen Bingyu is in the Ice Palace. The situation isn't very good. What happened? I'll go take a look. Yin's spirit was lying in the Ice Palace. She had been pierced in the chest by Ling Wanjian in a single move, and although her cultivation wasn't weak, she didn't have any battle strength left. Chu Tian saw her lying on the ice platform. Although she was in ruins and weak, she wasn't dead yet. He teased her a little heartlessly. I say, little sister Zong, you're the leader of one of the 6 great spiritual mountains. Why are you so weak? Pei, the death servant wasn't completely refined, otherwise how could this one be defeated so easily? Yin's spirit's pale face became even paler. She sat on the platform without moving, just like an ice doll. This sect master almost lost her life and you're actually taunting me. Calm down, calm down. I'll remember your merit this time. Chu Tian could only reveal an embarrassed smile. Why isn't Big Sister Bing here? How is she now? Chen Bingyu isn't here. Come with me. Yin's spirit and Yoda led Chu Tian and Vivian into the ancient Ice Palace ruins. The ruins were much larger than they imagined. There were ancient murals sealed in the ice walls, frozen relics scattered in the palace, and tall giant ice sculptures. These all showed traces of the ancient people's lives. Chu Tian looked around as he walked. This is the Chen family's ancestral land? Why is their home in this damn place? The great Zhou country's legends are not completely correct. Yin's spirit said as she walked. The Ice Palace is a very ancient inheritance. Its history and background are not inferior to the 6 spiritual mountains, only it has not been known to the world for many years. However, it is different from the 6 spiritual mountains. The Ice Palace inheritance has a very high requirement for the bloodline of the inheritor. Only a group of people with a special bloodline can accept it. Over time, they will form a family. Because of the sudden change in the environment or some other disaster, many people in the Ice Palace died and a small group left the ice field, forming the Chen family. So it was like this. Not only was this the great Zhou Chen family's ancestral land, it was also a very important inheritance. The Chen family went from a normal family to quickly grow in just a few decades, finally becoming a great Zhou royal family that even the 6 great powers feared. A very important reason was because of their deep background. When the Chen family's direct descendants or important people grew up, they would all be sent to the Ice Palace to activate their bloodline and cultivate the supreme cultivation techniques recorded in the Ice Palace, so the great Zhou royal family could develop greatly in a short period of time. City Lord, we're here. Yoda walked to the center of the Ice Palace. This is the core of the Ice Palace and even the entire ice field. Because the energy is too strong, it is very dangerous, so please be prepared. Chu Tian looked up and found that there was a giant palace door in front of him. The incomparably large palace door was made of some kind of ice crystal, with 36 ice dragons coiled around it. 2 large and dignified ice statues stood on the left and right like dignified door gods. Just from the aura alone, one could feel a strong sense of intimidation. Open it! Under Chu Tian's orders, Yoda opened the ice-sealed door and a visible stream of energy came out. Although he was already prepared, it was still like millions of ice needles piercing through his body. The blood in his body instantly turned cold, and even his spirit energy stopped flowing. Such strong energy. Even if it was a true spirit cultivator, they would still be injured by the energy radiation if they weren't prepared. At this time, Chu Tian's eyes had already turned white and spatial energy covered his body. This cold stream was very strong, but it wasn't enough to break through the spatial barrier of the void escaping. Rather than forcefully resisting this energy, it was better to use the void escaping to avoid it, saving more energy this way. Vivian walked in first and immediately cried out in surprise, "My God, what kind of place is this?" There was a giant ice cave in the main hall with a thick layer of ice that was over 100 meters deep. It was a light blue color, and the deeper the ice went, the thicker the color, giving off a very clear feeling. This was a very rare 10,000-year-old profound ice crystal. It was as hard as a level 3 rare metal, and it contained a very strong ice-attributed energy, so it could be used to make excellent quality equipment. The deeper one went, the higher the quality of the profound ice crystal. It was definitely an unimaginable treasure. Of course, although the profound ice crystal was precious, the thing that attracted people's attention was not these things. There was an energy whirlpool visible to the naked eye in this 100-meter deep ice cave. The blue and white energy was like a liquid that was being stirred up by some kind of power. Ice Spirit Frozen Spring? City Lord is very knowledgeable. This is the Ice Spirit Frozen Spring. Yoda nodded his head and said, "This spring is a natural spiritual item. The Chen family's descendants can use this spring to stimulate their bloodline power." Chen Bingyu actually chose to jump into the spring in order to quickly stimulate her power and increase her cultivation. What? Vivian turned pale with fright. He jumped right in. Although it was called a spring, it could not be considered a spring. The Ice Spirit Frozen Spring was a condensed form of energy, and since it was energy, it was very dangerous. Even if a spirit transformation cultivator fell into the Ice Spirit Frozen Spring, their chances of survival would not be higher than a mouse falling into the wrong river. How long has she been in there? It's already been 3 days and 3 nights. Chu Tian said to Vivian, "Your cultivation base is higher than mine. Can you use your spatial energy to cut open space and take her out? The energy in here is too strong." Vivian closed her eyes to sense it, but she helplessly shook her head. "My current cultivation base can't resist this kind of interference, so I can't control space. What should we do?" Everyone fell into deep thought. This was the core of the Death Ice field. The energy here was not something normal people could imagine. Even with Chen Bingyu's special ice-attributed bloodline, it would be hard for her to stay here for this long. Chu Tian walked in front of the ice cave. "Since it's like this, there's no other way. I'll personally go in." "You can't, City Lord. Chen Bingyu has the protection of her bloodline when she enters the ice spring. Sir City Lord does not have the relevant innate talent. With your current cultivation base, I'm afraid your soul will be frozen and you won't be able to live." "There's no need to worry." Chu Tian shook his head and said, "With the little fox's help, I can at least escape." Yoda wanted to try and persuade him again. Chu Tian didn't even listen as he jumped in. As he continued to fall, Chu Tian could clearly feel that the cold aura of death was becoming stronger and stronger. It had already broken through the barrier of the void escaping. There was no sound at all. Chu Tian fell into the ice spirit cold spring and there was no strong resistance. After a bit of a buffer, countless streams of terrifying cold energy began to cut Chu Tian's body like ice-cold knives. With this kind of energy, even if he used the Starlight Immortal body, he wouldn't be able to last long. Moreover, Chu Tian's cultivation base was not high. Fox. The little fox used its ability and actually created a small barrier. It made the surrounding energy flow change direction and charge at the little fox. Chu Tian was surrounded by starlight as he used his spirit energy to move forward. He was like a diver slowly moving underwater. Although he had the little fox's help, it still consumed a lot of energy. Chu Tian calculated that he only had 3 minutes at most. Because his divine sense couldn't spread out, it was unknown how long it would take if he used normal methods. But the little fox gave him a prompt. Chu Tian followed the little fox's direction and saw that at the bottom of the ice spirit cold spring, there was a ball of dazzling white light. This is a ball of flame. Chu Tian's expression slightly changed. This was definitely not a normal flame, rather it was a spiritual flame born from the spiritual vein after tens of thousands of years. This thing was definitely a heaven-defying treasure. The source of the ice spirit cold spring was this ball of flame. Found it. Chen Bingyu floated in front of the flame. It was like she was attracted by a magnet as the flame slowly entered her body. Chen Bingyu was clearly not dead, but she could not move at all. Damn, its possession. Chu Tian found that the spiritual flame contained a strong innate will. It was trying to possess Chen Bingyu and obtain its own flesh and blood body. If the possession was successful, Chen Bingyu's consciousness would completely disappear. In that case, she would be no different from being dead. Chu Tian circulated his elemental energy and was about to swim over, but at this moment, a thick killing intent was suddenly emitted from within the white lotus-like throbbing ice flame. It caused the surrounding ice spirit frozen spring to surge, and several white figures shuttled back and forth. When Chu Tian observed with rapt attention, his heart suddenly sank. Ice flood dragons. Several ice flood dragons. These were several ice flood dragons that were born from the ice spirit cold spring. The entire ice spirit cold spring was born from the mysterious flame, and these ice flood dragons were born from the ice spirit cold spring, so they were controlled by the will of the flame. Each ice flood dragon had a strong power. It was not something Chu Tian could fight against. Not to mention that Chu Tian was deep inside the ice spirit cold spring, he could not use his power at all. These ice flood dragons were like fish in water. How could he fight in this kind of environment? There was no time to think. Chapter 1022. Chu Tian closed up for an entire 10 days to consolidate his realm and refine his spirit energy. Of course, the most important thing was to comprehend the new cultivation technique, the phaseless sword art. This was a strange technique left behind by the mysterious Tian clan in ancient times. The reason why this sword art was named phaseless was mainly because the phaseless sword art was a strange sword art with spatial attribute. Therefore, it was traceless and formless, making it impossible for people to grasp it and guard against it. The difficulty of cultivating the phaseless sword art was too high. Not only did it require a top-grade sword cultivator's talent and source spirit, it also required spatial abilities. How could it be easy to meet these harsh requirements? The Great Zhou country's Heavenly Sword Sect's small phaseless sword was a new simplified sword art created by the Heavenly Sword Sect's founder to solve this problem. The small phaseless sword stripped away the unpredictable spatial ability, but it still had the characteristic of being invisible, and its killing power was extremely astonishing. However, in terms of power and other aspects, there was still a huge gap between the small phaseless sword and the real phaseless sword art. Chu Tian was cultivating the true phaseless sword. At this moment, Chu Tian was in the Miracle Gardens, sitting in a beautiful little valley in a white robe. He was surrounded by beautiful red and purple flowers, and there were too many rare herbs to count. There were little flower fairies around him, supporting Chu Tian's cultivation. Phaseless sword finger. Chu Tian opened his eyes and casually flicked his finger. Without any warning, the peak of the small mountain several thousand meters away suddenly tilted. The entire mountain rock that weighed tens of thousands of kilograms moved horizontally and fell into a lake, creating a huge splash. The cut on the small mountain was as smooth as a mirror. After 2-3 seconds, countless blue and white flames appeared, burning the remaining mountain rock at a terrifying speed. Wow, so powerful! The flower fairies all began to clap. Lulu landed on Chu Tian's shoulder and said, "Such a complex and profound cultivation technique, but you only used 10 days to grasp it? You're truly amazing." Chu Tian was very satisfied with the power of the phaseless sword art. The phaseless sword art could cut through space and at the same time, it could fuse sword chi into an attack. This attack could cut through any kind of solid matter and it could completely ignore the distance of the attack. If combined with Chu Tian's powerful divine sense, no matter where the opponent was, even if they were separated by thousands of meters, it would be as easy as taking something out of his pocket. The phaseless sword art was an almost perfect sword art. If one had to find a flaw, it would be that it consumed too much energy. Chu Tian had been in closed-door cultivation for a few days and his cultivation had broken through to the fourth true spirit layer. Now he had completed the transformation from an earth spirit cultivator to a heaven spirit cultivator and Chu Tian's spirit energy was several times higher than cultivators of the same level, but even so, he could only use the phaseless sword art. Chu Tian would not completely focus on the phaseless sword in the future. Miracle Commerce had already obtained the Heavenly Sword sect's top sword cultivation techniques and the cultivation techniques of the other 5 spiritual mountains had all been sent to Miracle Commerce. Chu Tian had 2 organizations directly under him. One was Miracle Commerce's Core Yun sect. The Yun sect was a large research organization that had reached several tens of thousands of people. Miracle Commerce's new technology and products were all invested here. The other core organization was the Chu sect. The Yun sect was a group of scholars and the Chu sect was a group of martial artists. The Chu sect had already absorbed large amounts of retainers. From the chiefs of the large forest tribes to the elders and sect masters of the great Zhou country's large sects, they had all become retainers of the Chu sect. Qilin Hall was an important subordinate organization of the Chu sect. The Chu sect mainly explored cultivation techniques, research cultivation techniques, and research secret techniques. One was civil and one was martial. Because of the large amount of knowledge and technology Chu Tian brought, the Yun sect was Miracle Commerce's most dazzling department. The Chu sect was inferior in comparison, but as Miracle Commerce continued to develop, Chu Tian would collect more and more secret techniques from the continent, as well as putting more advanced cultivation experiences and martial arts into it. Chu Tian believed that in the future, the Chu sect would be an existence that could change history. Chu Tian slowly adjusted his spirit energy and stood up. I've cultivated for over 10 days, it's time to come out. Thank you for helping me. No need to be polite, come play when you have time. Chu Tian passed by the center of the Miracle Gardens. There was a 30-meter-tall tree that stood in the center of the Miracle Gardens. Each leaf was glowing and the entire garden was covered in a dense mist. The ancient tree of life is growing too fast, it's still a few days from germination to full moon. Of course, the ancient tree of life is a divine object. Of course it can't compare to a mortal object. The ancient tree of life stood in the center of Miracle City, so the area affected became larger and larger. It gathered the forest of chaos earth veins, changing Miracle City's foundation. When it grew to a certain level as a city lord, the ancient tree of life's power would awaken and it would become Miracle City's guardian deity. With the flower fairies and the tree ants protecting it, it was not an easy matter for other powers to steal or destroy it. He didn't know what the current situation in Miracle City was like. Chu Tian decided to take a look incognito. In order to avoid being recognized by the citizens and causing trouble, he specially put on a large cloak. After the Battle of Miracle City ended, the city had returned to normal. The traces of the battle had disappeared and the city was even more lively than before. In front of the shopping center, there were several elven girls holding loudspeakers and billboards, shouting, "Good news, good news! The cell phone that everyone has been waiting for has finally appeared in the Miracle Shopping Center. Because the quantity is limited, it can only be bought online right now. Those with citizen cards can enjoy a 20% discount. The cell phone had already been mass-produced and was on the market. This was a product made of many products from Miracle Commerce. Although it was not as good as the original product, it was more convenient and concentrated, so it was a product that had a large market. Chu Tian walked over to take a look. This new cell phone was even more beautiful than the one made for the high-level people. Moreover, as the first cell phone released by Miracle Commerce and Miracle City, It would have a large commemorative value in the future, so everyone wanted to buy one. These elves selling the cell phones were definitely not Miracle City's residents. But Chu Tian did not find this strange. Because of the relationship between the elven King Lancelot and the Vice City Lord Vivian, there were quite a few elves who came to work in Miracle City, and some elves even built small towns nearby. There were already a portion of the elves, especially the young people who came to Miracle City. Some joined Miracle Commerce and some formed teams to start their own businesses. There were already several film and television companies established by the elves. Chu Tian asked in a curious voice, "What is a citizen card? You don't even know this? It must be an outsider." A Miracle City gnome looked at Chu Tian like he was looking at a country bumpkin. He took out a thin crystal card from his pocket and waved it in front of Chu Tian. Miracle City has been collecting a large amount of information on the citizens, and all the information is stored in the city's database. Then there is a high-tech personal identification card. Don't look down on this card, there is a person's spiritual imprint on it. Each person's spiritual imprint is different, so the citizen card is unique and cannot be imitated. It represents the identity of each official citizen. Chu Tian as the city lord didn't know about this at all, and he was being looked down upon by his own citizens. This was too shameful. It was a good thing he wasn't recognized. The citizen card can be used to buy things? Stupid! Miracle City's citizen card is not just proof of identity, it can also be used to open Miracle Bank's personal savings function. We can deposit source stones in the bank and use the citizen card to spend money in Miracle Commerce. It's fast and convenient. The most important thing is that we can earn interest by putting money in the bank. Why are you saying this much to him? Anyway, these outsiders won't understand. Right. I should quickly buy a cell phone, otherwise I'll run out of stock. They were too lazy to care about this country bumpkin, and they all went into the shopping center to buy new products. Chu Tian walked around and found that Miracle City was promoting the citizen card. This was to make it easier for Miracle City to manage. Meng Qingwu had invested large amounts of manpower and resources to create a citizen information system. The identity of each citizen living in Miracle City would be collected, and the other merchants and travelers would also have to go through the necessary procedures. This information would be used to create a database. Finally, based on the individual situation, they would be given citizen cards or other identification cards. Meng Qingwu's foresight made people sigh in admiration. This kind of information system had a large significance. It was as small as managing the city and helping with public security. It was as large as opening a bank account, taking out a personal loan, managing transportation, and even managing all of Miracle Commerce's business. This was a solid foundation for the information empire. This cell phone seems to be different from the ones we use. Chu Tian found a counter selling cell phones in the Miracle Shopping Center. Chu Tian was surprised to find that not only was the appearance different from the cell phones they used, there were also some differences in the internal functions. This is Miracle Commerce's first-generation cell phone. Not only does it combine the functions of receiving, playing, taking pictures, and communicating, it also has a microcalculation matrix embedded in it. Miracle Commerce has used this microcalculation matrix as the foundation to create a system for the cell phone, making it easier to operate and more comprehensive. This time Chu Tian was shocked. The microcalculation matrix was a simplified source energy matrix. The current Miracle Commerce's source energy matrix could not exceed 2 billion, so no matter how much it was compressed, it still had to be packed into many boxes. It had to be at least several hundred kilograms, so it could not be portable. The Yunsek's laboratory kept simplifying the source energy matrix, not caring about the cost of weakening it. They just wanted to minimize the size of the matrix, finally successfully creating a microcalculation matrix. The smallest calculation speed was only a few 100,000, and it couldn't contain intelligence, so it didn't have any data processing ability or value. However, it could be used as a simple operating system. The first batch of cell phones contained microcalculation chips, allowing the cell phone to have the ability to process information, creating a more flexible interface. This could be considered a breakthrough. Chapter 1023. The innate life forms in the ice spirit frozen spring were not normal life forms. The ice flood dragon did not have a physical body, so it could fuse with the ice spirit frozen spring. Therefore, it was an undying existence in the ice spirit frozen spring. Not to mention that Chu Tian did not have the strength to fight them. Even if he did, he would not be able to kill them in this kind of environment. The little fox saw that the situation was dire and did not need to be reminded. Its four limbs moved forward and it left Chu Tian's body. It wildly absorbed the surrounding energy while charging at an ice flood dragon. Its mouth was filled with sharp teeth as it bit down on the ice flood dragon's neck. The ice flood dragon's entire body was as clear as crystal, just like a natural work of art. However, there was a glowing energy flowing through its body. This energy was the essence of the ice flood dragon, and the little fox had directly sucked it in with a single bite. The ice flood dragon's body was covered in large amounts of cracks. With a prng sound, the ice flood dragon exploded. The little fox's methods to deal with this kind of life form were very effective. But the ice flood dragon's fragments were wrapped up by the ice spirit frozen spring's energy and then reformed. It was like what Chu Tian had thought. In this kind of environment, these ice flood dragons could not be killed. Fox, tie down a few large snakes. Chu Tian felt that the resistance was getting stronger and stronger. A bone-chilling cold seemed to have penetrated his body and entered his mind, causing his reactions to slow down, and he felt drowsy. This was very bad. The little fox was distracted dealing with the ice flood dragon, and the energy around Chu Tian increased, making it harder for Chu Tian to move forward. He couldn't even last 30 seconds. There was only one method left. Cover me. Chu Tian pulled out the netherworld sword and the netherworld ghost flame appeared. He jumped forward and held the sword hilt with both hands as he charged at the white ice flames. The ice flood dragons noticed Chu Tian's plan, and two of them turned around to deal with Chu Tian. The little fox noticed one of the ice flood dragons, but it didn't have time to stop the other one. So, the energy quickly flew over and Chu Tian felt a strong sense of danger envelop his body. Like a conditional radiation, Chu Tian released the power of his main source spirit and his eyes turned the color of space. A spatial energy surrounded his body. The energy in the ice spirit frozen spring was very strong. Chu Tian's cultivation base couldn't even compare to Vivian's. Now that he was in the ice spirit frozen spring, he didn't even have the ability to determine his position. He could only close his eyes and teleport. This kind of action was like closing his eyes and charging into a sea of flames. It was an extremely dangerous action. He couldn't care about that right now. Chu Tian was very clear that with his strength, he couldn't block a single attack from the ice flood dragon. Although there was a large risk in blindly teleporting, wasn't it better than waiting for death? The ice flood dragon released a cold stream and Chu Tian could clearly feel his blood freeze. Even the starlight immortal body couldn't stop this energy that could freeze everything. When Chu Tian was about to be turned into an ice sculpture, the surrounding energies suddenly repelled him. Chu Tian disappeared from his original position. He missed. The ice flood dragon didn't have the ability to think, but it was still a bit stunned. When it was about to look for a target, the little white fox had already charged over and bit the ice flood dragon's neck. Like it was drinking a drink, it instantly sucked out all the essence in the ice flood dragon's body. The ice sculpture trembled a few times before shattering into countless pieces. Chu Tian had successfully teleported away, avoiding most of the energy, but he had still received a large amount of damage. Now he couldn't resist the corrosion of the ice spirit spring. Perhaps he would be frozen in this damn place in a few seconds. There was still time for him to leave now. Ice spirit flame. Chu Tian's eyes opened and he was surprised to find that the white flame was just a few feet away, completely parallel to Qin Bingyu's body. The white ball of flame continued to change shape and separate. Large amounts of starry flames entered Qin Bingyu's 7 orifices. This is bad. At least half of this flame had entered Qin Bingyu's body. This meant that the possession was already half done. The ice spirit flame could condense an innate will, so it was not inferior to the netherworld ghost flame. Not to mention the fact that it could possess someone else's body, This meant that the ice spirit flame's innate will already had complex thoughts and desires, which far surpassed the netherworld flame. Chu Tian didn't think that the netherworld sword could swallow the ice spirit flame. If he rashly attacked, there would be the danger of being swallowed. The current situation was special. The ice spirit flame was halfway through its possession, so it was the easiest time to deal with it. Although the ice spirit flame's possession was very slow, with Chu Tian's current body condition, if he let go of this chance, he wouldn't have the ability to try it again. Netherworld, it's up to you this time. Chu Tian raised his sword and the tip of the sword stabbed into the ice spirit flame. The moment the two touched, there was a very strong will that filled the entire ice palace. It was wild rage. This was like a high and mighty queen being forcefully kissed by a beggar on the side of the road. The ice spirit flame was the will of the Eye of Ice that had evolved for tens of thousands of years, finally becoming a high-level existence that surpassed normal life forms. Now that a low-level human was holding a low-level innate spiritual flame, the sword actually released a strong and wild thought of swallowing it. How could it not be angry? This kind of low-level spiritual flame was not placed in the eyes of the ice spirit flame at all. The ice spirit flame had not only been nurtured for tens of thousands of years, its core was the will of the Eye of Ice. Whether it was energy or divine sense, how could this low-level innate spiritual flame compare to it? Not to mention the fact that the ice spirit frozen spring was its home ground. Wanting to extinguish it wasn't any harder than blowing out a candle. The netherworld flame did not seem to understand. All of its will and all of its power was released through the sword blade. The blue and white netherworld flame exploded and it was like a giant embracing the white sun. This was simply seeking death. Even if the ice spirit flame could only use a small part of its power to resist, this small part was enough to resist because the difference between the two was too large. Not to mention the netherworld flame did not have any home ground advantage here. The cold ice spread across the sword, sealing it in place. The ice spirit flame cut off the connection between the netherworld flame and the netherworld sword, which was equal to cutting off the netherworld ghost flame's path of retreat. With the two flames fighting, only one could survive. From the current situation, the ice spirit flame had an overwhelming advantage. In just a few rounds, the netherworld flame had been weakened by over half. Damn, did I underestimate this fellow? The netherworld flame was slowly pushed back, entering the netherworld sword to recover. In the end, no matter how the netherworld sword tried to enter, it was blocked by the layer of ice on the netherworld sword. The ice spirit flame shot out a beam of light at the netherworld sword. With a gotcha sound, it was like breaking ice. The treasure sword broke into 4 or 5 pieces and sank into the bottomless cold pond. This sword that had accompanied Chu Tian for over a year had actually been destroyed here. Losing the sword was a small matter, but the worst thing was that the netherworld flame's foundation had been destroyed. The weapon spirit had lost its support and died. Fuck. Father will fight it out with you. The netherworld flame condensed on the surface of his body. This was a secret technique similar to the flame demon transformation, turning his entire body into a flaming demon. Chu Tian temporarily replaced the netherworld sword as the weapon spirit and the flame. Perhaps like this, there was a chance for him to fight to the death. The ice spirit flame released a taunting intent, taking the initiative to attack. The ice spirit flame charged forward and surrounded Chu Tian. It tried to swallow the netherworld flame's power along with Chu Tian. This was a very easy matter for it. After all, the difference in strength between the two sides was too large and it didn't have any geographical advantage. But when the ice spirit flame covered Chu Tian's body, that dazzling white flame trembled and unexpectedly dimmed. The ice spirit flames began to panic because it had never encountered this kind of thing before. It was not like it was a flame or a living being, but rather a black hole that could swallow everything. The ice spirit flame wanted to escape, but it was shocked to find that it had already been sucked in by the black hole. Chu Tian's hands formed a seal and his body was surrounded by the aura of his main source spirit. His eyes had already turned black, which was not a normal eye color. It was a deep, empty eye that was filled with attraction like a black hole. Chu Tian wildly swallowed the ice spirit flame, weakening its power. The netherworld flame seized this chance to counterattack. The ice spirit flame was ignited. It struggled with all its might, but it was useless. The ice spirit flame was too careless. In this weak state, it actually took the initiative to attack Chu Tian, who it didn't know, so it gave Chu Tian a chance to turn the situation around. Chu Tian did not care about the price as he wildly swallowed it. From spirit to strength, from will to energy, he did not let a single thing go. The ice spirit flame's struggle became weaker and weaker. The netherworld flame chased after it, finally completely igniting the ice spirit flame. The flames seeped out of Chu Tian's body and spread in all directions. The netherworld flame's essence was to burn energy. The ice spirit frozen spring's strong energy was now like a large pool of fuel. The flames quickly spread. Several ice dragons struggled to escape, but they were swallowed by the flames. When Little Fox saw this, she quickly teleported away a few times. Yoda and the others anxiously waited. Vivian suddenly pointed and shouted, "Look, there's light in there." From the beginning to the end of her voice, in just a short breath's time, that little bit of light had already filled the entire ice cave, causing the surrounding ice crystals that were harder than metal to crack. A terrifying energy was released from the center of the ice palace, and the entire ice field began to violently tremble. Several hundred miles were affected as all kinds of avalanches appeared at the same time. In a very short period of time, the frozen lake was covered in cracks, and every crack was spewing out blue and white flames. This spectacular scene was simply like a scene from the end of the world. Yoda and the others were stunned. The entire ice lake was destroyed by the flames from the fountain. No one could explain what was going on with this shocking scene. Chapter 1024. Miracle City's City Lord's castle was holding a general meeting. The company's development had reached a turning point, so the focus of this meeting was to summarize the past and discuss the future. Meng Qingwu was wearing the City Lord's robe as she sat in the Vice City Lord's seat. Her beautiful and dignified face was very serious. There were several dozen people present. Other than the various tribe leaders and Dongfang Haoran and several generals, the rest were all peerless beauties. Not only were they very young, they each had their own merits and they all had serious expressions. At this time, a relaxed voice suddenly broke the heavy atmosphere in the meeting room. "Hey, Yun Yao? Feng Kaidai? Why are you back?" Chu Tianjing walked in from the side door and immediately saw two people he hadn't seen in a long time. It was Yun Yao and Feng Kaidai. They were both high-level members of Miracle Commerce, but they had been working in Oldman's small town for a long time. Chu Tian was very surprised. "When were you transferred back to the headquarters?" "I didn't even know." Feng Kaidai was still gentle and elegant, looking like a very cultured young miss from the outside. This kind of temperament made people feel like they were bathing in a spring breeze. Seeing Chu Tian, she revealed a gentle smile. "There are no more big matters in Oldman's small town. It's enough for Yun Yao's little brother Yun Xiao to take care of things. We received elder sister Qingwu's transfer order, and while the Oldman transport tower was completed 2 days ago, we came with Yun Yao to help." Yun Yao glared at Chu Tian and her voice was filled with sarcasm. "We've been in the city for a few days and you've only shown yourself now. You're truly a free and easy city lord." "You're misunderstanding me by saying this. Actually, I'm very diligent normally. I'm not in closed-door cultivation right now." When Chu Tian said this, Meng Ying and Nangong Yun rolled their eyes. Meng Qingwu also fiercely glared at him, but Chu Tian did not have the slightest awareness. "But the two beauties came from afar. It's my fault that I wasn't able to welcome you in time. Since it's like this, why are we having a meeting? Come, let's go drink." "Sir City Lord." Finance Minister Dolores unhappily stood up. This normally flirtatious vixen, at this moment she looked even more serious than Meng Qingwu. With a serious and reproachful tone, she said, "Today's meeting is very important. Even if you don't help us, don't cause trouble, okay?" Sorry, I was too excited." Chu Tian felt bored and sat down. Crossing his legs, he said to the young miss, "Let's begin." Meng Qingwu said, "Let's start with the production department." The production department was a very important department, so naturally it had to be managed by the most trustworthy person. Minister Meng Yingying quickly took out the prepared materials. Our Miracle Commerce's production department has done very well in the past month. We have completed an average of 20% of our production tasks and have built over 50 new factories, with 2/3 of them in the Forest of Chaos. Other than that, we are combining with smart brains to develop intelligent manufacturing. Currently, Meng Yingying spoke of a large amount of data and explained the situation in detail. She also introduced the future production plans and specific tasks. She spoke very smoothly, making Chu Tian look at her in a new light. Meng Qingwu gave her advice after listening. Meng Yingying quickly recorded it down. "All right." Chu Tian applauded in an exaggerated manner. "Miracle Commerce has a smart and capable commander like Yingying. Our production line can definitely be guaranteed." Meng Yingying's face turned red. She didn't actually do anything because her elder sister had given her 2 smart brains. These were all collected and analyzed by the smart brains. Even the production plans and tasks were given by the smart brains. Meng Yingying just summarized and gave her opinion. Her elder sister was in charge of the overall situation, so she didn't need to plan anything herself. Our production department is very smooth and our research is already on the right track. We are currently developing in an orderly manner, so I'll first show everyone the related projects. Meng Qingwu waved her hand and a large screen fell down, revealing a busy factory. "Look, this is Miracle Commerce's newest spaceship base. We've recruited large amounts of people and invested large amounts of resources and money, preparing to create a large-scale weapon that will dominate future battles. Because it is too complex, it will take a year to complete." A year? This was indeed a bit long. But this kind of complex large-scale weapon was not something that could be completed in a short period of time. Meng Yingying quickly said, "The production department will immediately prepare the related factories. Once the spaceships are developed, they can be produced as soon as possible." The second screen fell down at this time. Meng Qingwu said to the scene inside, "This is the new source energy weapons research room. The company has recruited large amounts of experienced mechanical masters from the great Zhou country. The Yun sect and I both believe that the mechanical armors of these mechanical masters are very valuable. If we can modify it with Miracle Commerce's technology, we can use source energy batteries to drive it, add in source energy shields, source energy swords, and source energy weapons. We can create a source energy fighter mech." While she was speaking, another screen appeared with the design. Meng Qingwu looked at Chu Tian. "What does the mayor think?" "This design is not bad." Chu Tian looked at it for a bit. "I believe that once the mech armor is developed, even the weakest soldier can become an expert. But I suggest we strengthen it further. For example, we can add a power engine to the mech armor, making it even faster and stronger. It would be best if we can install flying equipment, so our mech armor soldiers can freely fly in the sky. We can even install a smart brain on each mech armor, allowing us to fight with information." Meng Qingwu quickly waved her hand to stop him. "Stop, stop, stop. Does the young miss have anything better to add? Although your suggestion is very good, it is too far away from reality." Meng Qingwu said with a sigh, "Miracle Commerce's basic problem is that we don't have enough funds, so we can't develop this high-level mech armor right now. Even if we successfully develop a normal mech armor, it would be hard to mass-produce it. At most we can equip an elite army. We lack money? It can't be." Chu Tian had a look of disbelief. "Didn't we just borrow over 100,000 source stones from the Eternal Forest not long ago? The funds have already been filled, and with the company's income, we can't maintain this little bit of research funding. City Lord, you really don't know the cost of food and fuel if you don't manage the household." The finance minister Dolores couldn't sit still. "Do you know how much resources this mech armor requires? Our current budget is 300,000 source stones. As for the airship budget, it is a terrifying number. As for the Gnome Laboratory and the Yun Sect Laboratory, they are spending more and more every month, just like a bottomless pit. Not to mention the fact that we have just conquered the Warhounds Plains and the Great Zhou country, we still need to take out large amounts of source stones to invest in these areas. How many people are queuing up to apply for loans in the Miracle City area? With our current financial situation, it is very difficult to make any progress. Chu Tian's head swelled hearing this. What the hell? They actually spent this much money? We have many projects right now. Other than the Miracle Shopping Center and the Spiritual Energy Network, there are many other projects waiting to be deployed. Meng Qingwu lowered a few more screens and pointed at one of them as she said, for example, this city defense system task. We plan to build missile silos in the hidden mountains around Miracle City, creating a long-range military force. Other than that, we are also preparing to build giant source energy cannons in the mountains to deal with powerful enemies in the future. Chu Tian felt more depressed the more he heard. Father always thought that Miracle Commerce was a monster that could make money. As long as they fixed the holes in front of them, they wouldn't need to worry about money at all. Looking at the current situation, not only did Miracle Commerce lack money, it wasn't just a little bit. Although we need a lot of money, everyone doesn't need to be discouraged. Meng Qingwu saw that everyone's morale was a bit low. As the Vice City Lord, she immediately encouraged them. Miracle Commerce's profit potential is very large, but our current business is limited to the Great Summer Country and a few tribes in the forest. Moreover, the entire market hasn't been opened yet. There are currently several transport towers in the forest, and we are cooperating with the Eternal Forest. In the future, we will be doing business with several elven cities and tribes. Other than that, with the Great Zhou country and the Northern Militant country as the foundation, we will be expanding to the surrounding countries. The investment now is not small, but the returns in the future will be even larger. Chu Tian nodded. That's right, there are several small towns in the forest and the Great Summer country. How many markets can there be? We need to expand our territory. We need to speed up our plans. The powers in the Savage Highlands are still restless and there are too many variables. We can't slowly develop. Meng Qingwu began to make arrangements. Yun Yao, Kai Dai, you two will take over Dolores's work and work for the Miracle Shopping Center and foreign trade. You two have experience, so there shouldn't be any problems. This is the map of the forest cities and underground cities I prepared for you, as well as the general information of these cities, including the large tribes nearby. Miracle City will give you enough caravans and people, you just need to be in charge of dealing with them. This task was not light at all. Feng Kaidai was appointed as the foreign minister. Yun Yao was appointed as the commerce minister. The two of them immediately stood up. We will definitely do a good job. Chu Tian asked another question. What about our chief financial officer Dolores? Miracle City's commerce minister was Dolores in the past and the Fox People's caravans were established by Dolores. Now that the foreign trade and commerce matters were given to Feng Kaidai and Yun Yao, wouldn't Dolores have nothing to do? This seductive fox's abilities were not weak, so it was a pity that she was left idle in the city. Meng Qingwu replied, Miracle Commerce's biggest problem right now is the lack of money. Dolores has another important task, so she will focus on developing miracle banking from today onwards. Dolores nodded. I asked the city lord to be assured, the current Miracle City citizens already have a high enough trust in us. Ever since we introduced the citizen card and established the personal savings business, Miracle Banking's performance has risen. I believe that the bank's potential has not been fully displayed yet. Miracle Banking was proposed by Dolores, so it had a special meaning to her. Dolores would naturally do her best to develop it. Meng Qingwu emphasized once again, everyone remember, the current calm does not mean it will be stable forever. With the protection of the Trey Ants and the good relationship with the elves, we still have to rely on external help. Every moment we are not strong is a moment we can't relax. Danger is always hidden in the shadows, so we have to be vigilant in times of peace and let Miracle City develop as fast as possible. Chu Tian hadn't participated in the Young Miss meetings many times, but he never thought that the Young Miss aura would be this strong. After being tempered by the general chairman for over a year, she had become more and more mature, becoming a strong woman that could see the big picture. The meeting ended here. Everyone already knew what to do. Miracle City and Miracle Commerce's biggest problem right now was not having money. Therefore, in the future, making money was Miracle Commerce's most important task. Each department and each team had to work hard for this goal. Chapter 1025. Chu Tian vaguely remembered that after the netherworld ghost flame swallowed the ice spirit flame, it ignited the entire ice vein with the ice eye as the center. Large amounts of energy surged out and instantly covered the world, completely submerging Chu Tian. Damn, father's luck isn't bad, I didn't die. Chu Tian woke up to find that his limbs were fine and he was lying in a cave in the heavenly Yin Mountains. He thought it would be a small matter, but he never thought that he would be in such a dangerous situation. Now that he thought about it, Chu Tian was covered in cold sweat from the risk he took. Something's wrong. Chu Tian recovered his consciousness and found that there were many things that weren't right. The first thing he found was that the entire world was different from before. Everything in the world was clearer, the elements collided with each other, the flow of energy and matter in the air. Every small change could not escape Chu Tian's eyes. Chu Tian could even see the shape of every speck of dust that floated past him, and he could even feel the hairs on an ant in the corner of the ant nest. His divine sense was several times stronger than before. That's right. Chu Tian remembered that in the most dangerous moment, he had activated the swallowing power of his main source spirit and began a life and death battle with the ice spring's divine sense, finally successfully defeating the mysterious ice spirit flame. The netherworld flame defeated the strong and refined the ice spirit flame. Not only did it give Chu Tian its essence, Chu Tian also absorbed the divine sense that had been nurtured in the ice eye for over 100,000 years. This was an incomparably large amount of wealth. Chu Tian's divine sense had a large breakthrough, and now he had completely surpassed the mind's lamp realm, reaching the higher, vision domain realm. Although divine sense cultivation and cultivation base couldn't be said to be unrelated, there was a large independent relationship between them. Divine sense was the power to excavate a living being's soul and spiritual source. Spirit energy was the power to absorb the spiritual energy of all living beings in the world. The former excavated the source and the latter borrowed things to mend the heavens. Who was stronger and who was weaker, it couldn't be compared. But before one's divine sense reached a certain level, the range it could be used was very limited. In comparison, increasing one's spirit energy could directly increase one's cultivation base, increasing one's strength and extending one's lifespan, so the effects were much better. Divine sense cultivation was very difficult. Other than needing opportunities and fortuitous encounters, it also required one's own comprehension and the relevant qualities. This kind of strenuous and unrewarding cultivation made it difficult for cultivators. Although the divine sense production, cultivation, and fighting had a high value, it couldn't compare to direct strength. A truly qualified cultivator couldn't just purely pursue strength. Chu Tian knew that just having strength wouldn't allow one to surpass the limit realm. This was also the reason why Chu Tian had always focused on developing his divine sense. Only to increase his divine sense, not only did he need to have the relevant abilities, he also needed a fortuitous encounter like this. A fortuitous encounter could only be found and not sought. Just this reward alone made the risk worth it. Chu Tian's impression was that he was heavily injured and he would need to rest for at least half a month if he didn't die. Now he didn't have any injuries and his spirit energy had increased by a large amount. His cultivation had increased by 2 stages, going from the peak 2nd true spirit layer to the peak 3rd true spirit layer. If it wasn't for the bottleneck between the peak 3rd true spirit layer and the 4th true spirit layer, he would have already reached the 4th true spirit layer with the large amount of energy he had gathered. What was going on? Why did he increase this quickly? This was most likely the increase brought by the netherworld flame refining the ice spiritual flame. The biggest regret was that the sword had been destroyed in the fight and now it had fallen into the depths of the ice hole. Without the netherworld sword's help, his battle strength would be greatly reduced. Wait a minute. Without the sword, what about the flame? The value of a sword wasn't high. The most precious thing was the netherworld ghost flame. Chu Tian carefully inspected his body and was surprised to find that in his dantian and meridians, the flame and spirit energy were perfectly combined. This flame aura was very familiar. It was the netherworld flame attached to the netherworld sword. The netherworld flame had swallowed half of the ice spiritual flame and its quality had increased. Now it had already evolved several levels. It couldn't be compared to before. Chu Tian's right hand exploded with an explosion as blue and white flames appeared, moving through his fingertips. Although it had swallowed the ice spiritual flame, the netherworld flame was still dominant. The two did not merge together, rather one swallowed the other. The loser would become nutrients for the winner. He did not have a fire source spirit or an ice source spirit. Why could he directly merge the flame into his spirit energy? This was a very strange and mysterious matter, but he didn't feel any discomfort. On the contrary, his strength had increased by a large amount. Netherworld, how is your current situation? I swallowed the ice spiritual flame and obtained an unprecedented evolution, so I can separate from the netherworld sword and completely merge with Master's spirit energy, becoming a part of Master's strength. Good. Very good. Even if Chu Tian didn't use his source spirit, his spirit energy was already very strong. The most important thing was that Netherworld had undergone a large evolution, becoming an artificial intelligence. Its relationship with Chu Tian was like a master and servant contract. This was different from the little fox and Chu Tian's relationship. Chu Tian was the little fox's master. If the little fox died, Chu Tian wouldn't die. Once Chu Tian died, it would be hard for the little fox to live. However, the little fox's personality was a bit strong. The contract only restricted the little fox's life, but it did not restrict the little fox's thoughts. Netherworld was a spiritual life, completely under Chu Tian's control. Therefore, Netherworld's personality was very strong. He didn't have a personality like the little fox, but he was an absolutely loyal and reliable talisman. Netherworld was already a top-level artificial intelligence. If he could create a super source energy matrix to strengthen it, wouldn't Chu Tian have a super smart brain implanted in him? This would have a large amount of benefits and convenience, so Chu Tian decided to give it a try when he returned. Big brother Chu Tian, you've finally woken up. Vivian felt movement and immediately charged in. You really worried us to death. How long have I been unconscious for? What happened in between? Big brother, you still don't know? Vivian's face was filled with worship as she spoke in an exaggerated tone. You burn the entire ice field's spiritual vein and large amounts of spiritual energy were released from the fire, giving us quite a bit of benefits. Even my cultivation has increased by quite a bit and Een spirit is about to reach the 5th true spirit layer. The death ice field's spiritual vein has been burning all this time, releasing spiritual energy that surpasses the 6 spiritual mountains. The ice field will soon become a new paradise not inferior to the 6 spiritual mountains. This completely surpassed Chu Tian's expectations. Chu Tian did not know how this happened, but it was not important. He quickly asked, what is Big Sister Bing's situation like? Big Sister Bing has already woken up, but she can't move right now. Come, let's go take a look. Chen Bingyu was sitting cross-legged in the cave. Her silver-white hair cascaded down like a waterfall, dancing without any wind. Her mature body was actually covered in white flames, but what was strange was that these flames did not harm her at all. This was a blessing in disguise for Chen Bingyu, not any less than Chu Tian. The ice spirit flame's possession was interrupted halfway. Half of the ice spirit flame had been refined by Chu Tian and the other half had entered Chen Bingyu's body. The ice eyes will even took the initiative to change it, allowing the powerful energy to adapt to Chen Bingyu's body. Following that, the ice and fire were taken care of by Chu Tian and this energy was naturally taken by Chen Bingyu. The ice spirit fire's target of possession was not just anyone. This had to be established on the premise that they had the relevant bloodline. Chu Tian and Chen Bingyu each took half of the ice spirit flame. Chu Tian refined it with the netherworld flame and the netherworld flame refined the ice spirit flame, using its essence to evolve. Chen Bingyu directly turned the ice spirit flame into her own energy. The two sounded the same, but there was an essential difference. In short, Chen Bingyu's increase this time was very large. She was currently in the 5th or 6th true spirit layer, so there was still room for her to increase. Moreover, Chen Bingyu had merged with the ice and fire, so her battle strength was even stronger than before. Sorry. Chen Bingyu saw Chu Tian come to visit. Seeing that nothing had happened to this fellow, Chen Bingyu was a bit relieved. The consciousness in the ice spring is too strong. I wasn't prepared and was bewitched for a moment, so I did such a dangerous thing. I almost dragged you down with me. Don't say it like that, I'm fine right now. Chu Tian really didn't suffer any losses. He gave a few laughs without a care in the world. You just need to rest here and we'll stabilize the situation. Then you can smoothly become the great Zhou Queen. Chen Bingyu shook her head with a bitter smile. What queen? She wasn't interested. If Chu Tian wanted to control the great Zhou country, he needed a direct power. Chen Bingyu had already obtained the strongest inheritance of the great Zhou royal family's ruins, so her future was limitless. As long as he spread the news, it was unknown how many people would come to join him. The position of great Zhou queen, Chen Bingyu couldn't run away. Chu Tian was prepared to build the imperial city near the ice field. With the large amount of spiritual energy in the ice field, it would be able to create a large power. The great Zhou royal family had miracle commerce's support, so their influence would be even larger than the 6 spiritual mountains. This way they could firmly grasp the great Zhou country. Boss, I'm back. Nangong Yun brought people back at this time. Good news, Yuan Jinan, Jin Kuei, and the others have submitted. They are now willing to cooperate with miracle commerce as long as it doesn't destroy their current benefits. Submitted? This was also expected. Chu Tian nodded and said, now that the general trend cannot be stopped, we will unite the large sects and the small and medium-sized powers of the great Zhou country. In the name of protecting the country, we will launch a crusade against the Heavenly Sword Mountain. This time we must pull out this thorn and also kill the chicken to warn the monkeys, shocking all the great Zhou sects. Chapter 1026. Miracle Banking's savings business in the past only targeted groups, like the gnomes and the surrounding tribes. That was because Miracle City didn't have enough credibility at the time, so they could only work with their close allies. The situation now was different. Meng Qingwu decided to properly develop the banking business. This was an important part of Miracle Commerce's strategy. It could provide Miracle City with an endless supply of funds in the future. As for risk control, there was no need to worry about that. Meng Qingwu was very confident in Miracle Commerce's current situation. Just Miracle Commerce had too many things to invest in, so the failure rate of these investments was negligible. Miracle City's situation was already very different. Whether it was the citizens or the surrounding tribes, they all had a high sense of recognition towards Miracle City. The opportunity for the citizens to save and the currency change was already ripe. Meng Qingwu had spent quite a bit of effort to create a database of the citizens and popularize citizen cards in the city. There were already initial results and Miracle Banking received several tens of thousands of source stones. The city had around 1 million people, so the flowing source stones would reach several million. Even if they could only absorb 1/10 of it, it would still be several 100,000. Of course, in order to motivate the citizens to save money, Miracle Banking announced the interest rates for individual savings. They opened a current account with an annual interest rate of 5%. The interest would be generated every day and they could withdraw it at any time. As for a fixed deposit account, there were monthly, half a year, full year, 2 years, 3 years, and etc. The longer the deposit, the higher the interest. If it was a fixed deposit for 3 years, the annual interest rate would reach 50%. 100 source stones in the bank for 3 years. Not only would the principal be 100 source stones, the interest would also reach 150 source stones. Miracle Banking also allowed people to withdraw it ahead of time, but it would automatically downgrade it based on the amount of time it had been deposited. There would also be a processing fee, so it was definitely a popular financial service. The most important thing was, in the Great Zhou country, the Great Summer Country, the various forest cities, and even other countries, Miracle City had a bank. Miracle Banking was managed by a smart brain network, with several supersource energy matrices operating at the same time. The data system would be complete, and after people deposited their source stones in Miracle Banking, they could withdraw it from any place with Miracle Banking. Other than that, Miracle Banking had direct spending power. Whether it was the Miracle Shopping Center, Miracle Hotel, Arena, Trial Field, or Chelan Hall, as long as it was in Miracle Commerce's business, they could all use the card to spend, which was fast and convenient. Other than that, Miracle Banking was preparing to establish a currency system. The currency could be directly linked to source stones and could be exchanged for source stones in Miracle City. People could directly use the currency for their daily transactions, which was very convenient. Miracle Banking's transfer business was about to be tested. In the future, merchants would be able to trade with each other in Miracle Banking. This would eliminate the trouble and risk of carrying large amounts of source stones. Not to mention the fact that source stones could be stored in the bank, so why wouldn't they do it? Meng Qingwu was a strategist with great foresight. With Meng Qingwu personally planning and Dolores leading the way, how hard would it be for Miracle Banking to develop? Chu Tian had never cared about the matters of the Chamber of Commerce. The company was filled with talented people, so why did he need to worry about this? Chu Tian practiced his sword art all day, reading all kinds of books, and doing research whenever he had time. Although Miracle Commerce's research was very strong, one Chu Tian was better than 10,000 researchers. The bottlenecks that the Yun sect faced were easily broken through as long as Chu Tian made a move. The young miss was a workaholic and had been very busy recently. Chu Tian came to Meng Ying's office and saw Meng Ying sitting at the table, writing something. There were several gnome assistants helping her organize the information. Chu Tian, you came at the right time. Did you know? The number of people opening accounts in Miracle Banking has increased by several times. Meng Ying happily reported the results. We'll soon have enough funds. You're thinking of the problem too simply. Miracle Banking can't easily make a mistake. We still have to consider the risks involved. Otherwise, if there is a crisis, people's trust in us will be greatly reduced. With the young Miss' cautious personality, I'm afraid she won't dare move too much money into loans or investments. Meng Ying had never thought of this before. She slightly knit her brows. What should they do now? Chu Tian suddenly gave a sigh. Having a big business also has its disadvantages. Meng Ying was stunned. She didn't know why Chu Tian had this kind of feeling. What disadvantages? Even our Ying keeps talking about business. This doesn't seem like your personality. Meng Ying was a bit embarrassed. I just want to help everyone. My brain is a bit stupid and I can't do anything well. It's all thanks to elder sister giving me a few smart brains. Otherwise, I wouldn't be able to do anything. Chu Tian grabbed Meng Ying's shoulder. Hi, then don't make it hard on yourself. If there's a problem, just leave it to the smart brains and assistants. Why do you have to do everything yourself? Meng Ying was a bit embarrassed. Right now in front of everyone, don't touch me. Ha, what are you afraid of? Who doesn't know our relationship? Chu Tian's face was as thick as a wall. The gnomes were a bit embarrassed and could only pretend they didn't see anything. Chu Tian then said, Come, I'll bring you to a fun place. A fun place? Where is it? Elven Small Town is holding a gourmet exchange and Vivian sent me an invitation. Gourmet exchange? Meng Ying instantly revealed an interested look. Chu Tian continued to introduce. Several dozen elves from various towns and forests will gather in Moonshine Town at around dusk. Each elven participating will bring the most delicious food they think they have to share with everyone. Think about it, these elves all come from different areas of the Forest of Chaos, so how many delicious things will there be? Tell me, can we miss this kind of fun banquet? Meng Ying's eyes lit up. There's actually this kind of interesting event. It's said that other than the gourmet exchange, there will also be a forest fashion show, an art exhibition, and a music conference. These are all things that are rarely seen in 100 years. Chu Tian saw that Meng Ying was already very excited, so he didn't waste any more words. He directly said to Meng Yingying's assistants, "I'll leave the matters here to you all. Minister Meng Yingying and I will be leaving for a day or two." Meng Yingying was a bit hesitant. "Everyone is very busy right now, wouldn't it be? What are you worried about? Not to mention nothing, even if something happens, I'll take care of it." Chu Tian's attitude was very strong. The Elven King and some other members will also be attending, so this isn't just for fun, it is to promote the friendship between the two sides and strengthen the Elven alliance. "I order you to come with me as the city lord." "Is that so? So it's this important?" Meng Yingying no longer hesitated as she excitedly said in a high-spirited voice, "We can't be careless. We have to prepare Miracle City's best food. Miracle City's food will lose to the elves." "That's right, what clothes do you think we should wear?" The two of them discussed as they left. The Elven food exchange was indeed a rare sight. Chu Tian wanted to eat and play empty-handed, but Meng Yingying firmly disagreed. She felt this was too rude, they had to prepare human food. Finally they found the Miracle Hotel's source energy chef. The company just happened to have a level 3 high-grade demon beef. The two of them immediately agreed and carefully cooked several large steaks. Meng Yingying's exquisite face was filled with memories. "I remember when we were in South Sky City, the first source energy food we cooked was steak, so this is the food that best represents us." That's right, a certain young miss was filled with passion and actually wanted to start a business selling steak. Now that I think about it, if we continued doing it back then, perhaps there would have been steak chains everywhere. Meng Yingying fiercely glared at him. "You're not allowed to expose my dark history, I'm not done with you." The two of them packed the steaks while they were still hot and headed to Moonlight Town. It was unknown how the Elven King convinced the Elven Council, but although the elves had built Moonlight Town next to Miracle City, the Elven Town was still closed off and outsiders couldn't enter, so they didn't know much about the elves' lives. The entire Elven Town had a population of around 10,000 and most of them were young elves. Moreover, the elves were very rich, so there were very few precious items in Miracle City. There were quite a few new products like cell phones in the Elven Town. When Chu Tian brought Meng Yingying to the small town, the two of them were stunned by the scene inside. Miracle Commerce's products could be seen everywhere in the Elven Town. There were giant screens, loudspeakers, and all kinds of exquisite source energy lamps. Each street was covered in a gentle glow and there were tree houses neatly arranged, with all kinds of crystal and wood sculptures arranged neatly. There were thousands of elves moving through the small town in groups of 3s and 5s, with each person carrying a full food box. There were all kinds of jams, pastries, and elven delicacies everywhere. The elves were singing around the moon well. The entire small town was very lively. "The city lord is here. City Lord Chu Tian is here." Chu Tian was recognized as soon as he arrived and several hundred elves surrounded Chu Tian. Each elf had a face filled with joy and their eyes lit up like they had seen their idol. "I'm from the Silver Moon Forest and I've heard your story. I really admire you." An elven girl squeezed to the front. "My parents and little brother really want to see you. Can you give me an autograph?" "Of course, there's no problem." Chu Tian picked up a pen with a faint smile. "How many do you want?" "1, 2, oh no, 3. All right, I'll give it to you." The elven girl took the autograph and happily cried out, "I've obtained City Lord Chu Tian's autograph. I've obtained City Lord Chu Tian's autograph." The other elves were instantly filled with excitement. "I'm from the Twilight Forest and I also admire you. I'm from Green Jade City and I like watching movies. My dream is to make movies. And me. Chu Tian never would have thought that since he was famous among the elves, he would be surrounded by countless passionate worshippers. These elves all came from different forest towns and it wasn't easy for them to come to Miracle City. This was because the transport towers could easily harm the safety of the main city. The transport towers in other places had restrictions and the transport towers were all managed by smart brains. Every elf that wanted to use the transport tower first had to apply for a transport permit from Miracle Commerce. This transport permit needed to collect personal information and finally they would be given a citizen card with a spiritual imprint on it. The elf would be able to use it to transport in the future. Miracle City had temporarily restricted the teleportation area. Even if the elves obtained the transport permit, they could only teleport within their tribe or within their country, which meant they could only teleport in their own territory. If they wanted to teleport to Miracle City, Oldman Small Town, or any other place, they had to clearly write down the reason and purpose of the area and apply for a special permit. They could only enter after being approved by the government of the area. Otherwise, with the transport network controlled by smart brains, these directions would be sealed off and they wouldn't be able to teleport. This exchange was very rare. The elves were all representatives from various cities and they could only enter after Meng Qingwu agreed. But they could only play around in Miracle City for a week at most, so they treasured this chance. In their eyes, Chu Tian was a genius that created everything, an omnipotent idol. Now that they saw him in person, how could they not be excited? Chapter 1027. In less than half a month, the Great Zhou country had undergone a series of dramatic reversals. First, the Heavenly Sword sect gathered the other 4 sects to attack the Black Moon sect, but after a few days of fighting, they were mysteriously defeated. The Heavenly Sword sect's sect Master Ling Wanjian and Vice sect Master Ling Ying were killed one after another. The alliance formed by the 5 spiritual mountains collapsed and 200,000-300,000 people were captured by the Black Moon sect. When everyone was stunned, the Divine Machine sect, the Medicine King Valley, the Void Spirit Cave, and the Black Tortoise sect suddenly announced that the Heavenly Sword sect had colluded with the Eagle Burial Kingdom to cause a civil war in the Great Zhou country, so they wanted to join forces with the Black Moon sect to attack the Heavenly Sword sect. This change was just too strange. Even if one's thoughts jumped, perhaps they couldn't withstand this dramatic change, right? A few days ago, the sects that were locked in a fierce battle had actually formed an army in less than a week's time. Together, they used the banners of eradicating evil, protecting the Great Zhou dynasty, and re-establishing the royal family, and so on. They incited a large number of forces, big and small, and threw the entire Great Zhou dynasty into chaos. From there, they started a grand battle to encircle and annihilate Heavenly Sword Mountain. Was it easy to break the Heavenly Sword Mountain, the head of the 6 spiritual mountains? The Heavenly Sword sect was like a group of dragons without a leader. When the Black Moon sect led the 5 spiritual mountains to gather at the foot of the Heavenly Sword Mountain, the entire Heavenly Sword Mountain fell into chaos. The battle hadn't even begun and they were already in chaos. Yin Spirit came in front of Chu Tian. "We can attack." "No rush, no rush." Chu Tian revealed a faint smile as he looked over the people of the 4 sections. Although he believed in the young Miss and Dolores' persuasion skills, the sect master's attitudes changed so quickly. This was something Chu Tian never expected. "We have a 100% chance of winning this battle. We don't need to pursue a quick victory, we need to pursue a complete victory." "The City Lord is right, the City Lord is right." The sect masters all nodded. The so-called a wise man submits to circumstances. After personally visiting Miracle City, they couldn't be stubborn even if they wanted to. Miracle City's technology, Miracle City's potential, and Miracle City's experts, especially the Elven and Treant experts, they were all filled with fear. Perhaps any one of them could sweep through the Great Zhou sect masters. With Miracle City's powerful background and technology, why would they covet the Great Zhou country? It was as Chu Tian said, the Great Zhou country was just a small part of Miracle City's territory. Miracle City did not need to completely control the Great Zhou country. These Great Zhou country sects would take advantage of Miracle City's early stages to join them, so they would receive an unimaginably high reward in the future. Meng Yingying ran in front of Chu Tian to report the results of the negotiations. "We've talked to the Heavenly Sword Mountain and several stubborn old men are guarding their gates, refusing to surrender. They even said that if we dare take a step forward, they will activate the 10,000 Sword Mountain array and cut us all to pieces." That arrogant? They had to be taught a lesson. Chu Tian said to Nangong Yun standing beside him, "How is the weapons deployment?" Nangong Yun confidently replied, "A Heaven's Punishment airship is already in place and there are 20 source energy cannons." As long as boss gives the order, we will immediately attack. Since they refuse a toast only to be forced to drink a forfeit, then we'll let them have a taste of our might. Understood. This attack was not only led by the 5 great sects, there was also the support of Miracle Commerce's weapons. So what if the Heavenly Sword Mountain was made of iron? The airship had a wave of bombardment and the 20 source energy cannons had been firing for several hours, as well as powerful destructive missiles. Who would be able to withstand such an attack? The Heavenly Sword Mountain's protective array was famous for its powerful attacks. The 5 great sects had not even launched an attack and the Heavenly Sword Mountain's protective array had already been reduced by half. This did not just reduce the Heavenly Sword Mountain's defenses, it also dealt a large blow to the Heavenly Sword Mountain's morale. The time has come. Full force attack. Miracle Commerce could not maintain their firepower forever. When the bombardment was about done, the 5 great sects finally launched their first wave of attacks. The Heavenly Sword Mountain's defenses were already full of holes, not to mention that there were many experts that came from the forest. After several attacks, the Heavenly Sword Mountain's protective array was finally destroyed. The mountain gate has been broken. The Heavenly Sword Mountain's luck has been exhausted. Immediately put down your weapons and surrender. Those who surrender will not be killed. The Heavenly Sword Sect's elder and sect master have colluded with the Eagle Burial Kingdom, so this is their fate. The Heavenly Sword Sect's disciples do not need to be buried with them. The people of the 5 great sects began to shout out in unison. No one wanted to cause a large slaughter and the Heavenly Sword Sect's normal disciples would not be involved in high-level matters. Not to mention the fact that the Heavenly Sword Sect's cultivators had high battle strength, they would be the backbone of the Eagle Burial Kingdom in the future. If they were consumed in a civil war, it would be too much of a pity. Don't listen to them. A senior sect elder shouted from a high place, "The Heavenly Sword Mountain has been passed down for tens of thousands of years and countless heroes have died. How could it be destroyed at this moment? The mountain exists and the people exist. The mountain dies and the people die. The time to defend the Heavenly Sword Sect has come. Kill these villains that are spreading lies. You're seeking death and you want everyone to die with you? We'll talk after we kill you." Nangong Yun's hands turned into giant flame wings as she flew into the sky, instantly creating a thick cloud of flames as she charged at the other side. The Heavenly Sword Sect elder was clearly not a normal person. He sent out several dozen streams of sword chi that fell onto Nangong Yun like a waterfall. Although it scattered the flames around Nangong Yun, it couldn't harm Nangong Yun's starlight immortal body at all. A trivial third awakened soul layer dares to be this arrogant? Go die. Nangong Yun didn't make any fancy movements. She punched the air and directly smashed the man and sword into pieces in an extremely violent and clean manner. Who else is there? Nangong Yun killed one of the strongest elders of the Heavenly Sword Sect in a single move. Her figure was like an angry and proud fire phoenix that stood in the air. This kind of disdainful aura and wild strength made people not dare look at her for a while. But at this time, several cloaked figures came out of the crowd. The aura they released was not weaker than the senior elder and the person leading them even had a cultivation in the 6th true spirit layer. No matter how fierce Nangong Yun was, she still lost in cultivation. Therefore, she was forced back by the other side in a single move. Of course, she had the Starlight Immortal Body and the Nirvana Immortal Body. Nangong Yun's defense and recovery were impeccable. She was not that easy to defeat. Yoda said from below when he saw this, "These should be people from the Eagle Burial Kingdom. If this old man personally reveals their faces, the morale of the Heavenly Sword Sect's disciples will fall and they will collapse on their own." Why bother Prophet Yoda to make a move for such a small character? Chu Tian sat in the middle of the crowd, watching the battle like he was watching a play. "I've comprehended a new move, let me give it a try." Yoda was a bit stunned. What was the new move? The other side had several people in the 5th true spirit layer. Even if Chu Tian's cultivation had increased, could he surpass this high cultivation gap? Not to mention this was not a one-on-one battle. Nangong Yun knew she couldn't beat the other side, But with her fierce personality, even if she knew she couldn't win, she still wouldn't retreat. When Nangong Yun was prepared to launch an even stronger attack, something Nangong Yun never imagined happened. A strange power appeared. It seemed like it could ignore the bindings of space and time as it suddenly descended onto Nangong Yun's body. Nangong Yun's body suddenly trembled as blue and white flames wrapped around him. An incomparably strong power suddenly appeared on his body, and Nangong Yun felt his strength increase, becoming at least 5 times or 10 times stronger. Isn't this the boss power? Why did it appear on my body? Chu Tian's voice sounded in his mind. I've sent netherworld energy into your body, so your current strength won't lose to any of them. Let's fight to our heart's content. Thank you, boss. Nangong Yun could not understand what was happening, but what did it matter? No matter what the boss did, she never thought of understanding it. Nangong Yun could feel the power enveloping her body, and she immediately gave a long roar. Heaven-burning fist. The netherworld flame and phoenix flame combined, and a storm was released, instantly burning 2 Eagle Burial Kingdom people into ashes. It's actually this strong. Nangong Yun was shocked herself. The moment Nangong Yun was stunned, the Eagle Burial Kingdom expert's leader used a secret technique to charge over and slashed at Nangong Yun with his scimitar. Nangong Yun was sent flying several meters, but she wasn't injured at all. Why are you so stupid? Chu Tian's voice sounded in Nangong Yun's mind again. I'll teach you 2 more moves, quickly take care of them. Nangong Yun once again felt power descend upon her body. The Eagle Burial Kingdom expert wanted to take advantage of this, and when he was about to approach this woman, large amounts of netherworld flame condensed on his body, instantly forming the image of a demon. Flame demon transformation. Wasn't this Chu Tian's unique secret technique? While everyone was in a daze, a sword chi appeared in Nangong Yun's right hand. She took a step forward and her body suddenly disappeared. Several dozen dazzling sword glows appeared. It was like an endless wave that tore through the void. Several cloaked people were instantly cut into pieces. The leading expert barely managed to block a few of them, but the netherworld flame sword art was too strong, not to mention Nangong Yun's explosive strength. His protective spirit energy was broken. Nangong Yun stabbed the sword chi into the other side's chest. How is this possible? The Eagle Burial Kingdom expert revealed a look of disbelief. He couldn't understand until he died. How could Nangong Yun, who wasn't even at the heaven spirit realm, release this kind of terrifying strength? The people around Chu Tian were all stunned. What was wrong with Nangong Yun today? Was she possessed by Chu Tian? Chu Tian sat in his chair without moving, but his golden eyes slowly returned to their original color. He closed his eyes and gently breathed, with sweat already covering his temples. It would be strange if you could understand. Chapter 1028. Chu Tian was surrounded by a large group of elven worshippers, and most of them were young and beautiful elven girls, making Meng Yingying on the side very jealous. Didn't he say he was coming to the conference? He was actually here to pick up girls. Cuckoo! What are you doing? What are you all doing? The Elven Council's chairman Augusta appeared and scolded them. The elves quickly retreated. The Elven King Lancelot and several high-level members of the Elven Council had come, as well as several Elven city lords. Vivian was behind them, and when she saw Chu Tian, she immediately winked at him. Vivian was very happy that Chu Tian was willing to participate in the elves' meeting. Although the speaker's face was not very good and his eyes were not kind, after all, it was this fellow who destroyed the elven tradition, so how could they hope to give him a good look? Chu Tian did not care about this at all. His face was as thick as a wall. He immediately brought Meng Yingying over to greet him with a smile. You are Miracle City's city lord Chu Tian? Several unfamiliar elves looked at him with curiosity. These people were all famous elven characters, being city lords of elven cities. Even in the Forest of Chaos, they were considered first-class experts. These elves were not unfamiliar with Chu Tian and Miracle City. Although Miracle City's overall strength was not strong, now that they had obtained the Treants, it was hard for other powers to threaten them other than giant powers. They had become a very influential power in the Forest of Chaos and had recently become famous in the Forest of Chaos. If it's not Chu Tian, who else could it be? The Elven King Lancelot first introduced the City Lords to Chu Tian before saying to Chu Tian, "It said that City Lord Chu Tian has subdued the northern Great Zhou country and has made large progress. This is truly worthy of celebration. Coming to the Elven town despite your busy schedule, the elves are filled with gratitude." Meng Yingying saw the Elven King being this polite and was a bit flattered. No. Being invited here is our honor. Vivian cut in and said, "I invited Big Brother Chu Tian." Augusta revealed a dissatisfied expression. This was clearly an elven gathering. What was wrong with inviting a human? Today is a lively day. We shouldn't just stand here and stare. Chu Tian did not treat himself as an outsider at all. Miracle City has cooperated with the Eternal Forest for many days, and it seems like there are some results. The elves of the Forest of Chaos can gather together. This must be very rare. An elven city lord said with a smile, "The transport towers in the forest cities haven't been built yet, so unless there are important matters for our elves, we don't even need to think about this kind of gathering." That's right, City Lord Chu Tian's skills are truly admirable. Another elven city lord gave a sigh of praise. The elves are too far behind the humans. Chu Tian immediately said, "Actually, the humans are still the same. Working with the elves and miracle commerce is already at the forefront. Ha ha." Augusta and the old-fashioned counselors all had ugly expressions on their faces. The elves had relations with miracle commerce, and there were more and more elves that wanted to reform. These city lords didn't have much contact with the Eternal Forest, not even meeting once in 100 years, so they didn't strictly follow the Eternal Forest's rules. Now the Elven King was using the transport towers to connect the various places. The Elven City Lords all stood on the Elven King's side. Chu Tian sat down with the Elven King, and Meng Yingying had already taken out the steak she prepared. "Everyone, come and try Miracle City steak. This is cooked by our most outstanding Source Energy chef." "Thank you, Yingying. It really is too delicious. Try our Silver Moon Forest's miracle fruit." Meng Yingying was very beautiful and had a simple and lively personality, so it was easy to get along with people. Not to mention that Meng Yingying often used her image to make movies, and these movies were very popular among the elves, so Meng Yingying was considered a celebrity among the elves. Everyone fought to give her delicious food to try. "This is my cell phone number. Everyone can contact me if there's anything." "What? You don't have cell phones or communication devices?" "It's fine. We'll make arrangements early and have the signal cover the area." The elven food exchange this time allowed the elves from different areas to get to know each other, as well as letting the elves know Meng Yingying and Chu Tian. Everyone tasted the specialties and delicacies of their respective areas, quickly becoming familiar with each other. Meng Yingying decided to bring everyone to Miracle City to play tomorrow, which made the young elves very excited. The elves' spiritual life was very rich. Halfway through the food exchange, there were fashion shows, art exhibitions, tea parties, and musical exchanges. Chu Tian finally understood why the elf civilization developed so slowly. The elves never grew tired of these trivial things, especially the arts. This was most likely due to the elves' nature. The elves naturally did not like fighting, therefore their desire for power, and wealth was not as strong as humans. Chu Tian saw the elves' enthusiasm and his heart was filled with happiness. "I suggest that we hold more of these exchanges. It doesn't have to be limited to the elves. The large races of the forest and even the large races of the continent can all participate. This way we can communicate and improve." "Nonsense," Augusta said with a snort. "Crude spirit beasts and hypocritical humans. Nothing good will happen if these races are with the elves. The elves do not need to interact with these cruel and sinister races." This old man's thoughts were too extreme. Chu Tian wanted to properly teach him a lesson. The Elven King said with a smile, "City Lord Chu Tian's idea isn't bad, but this transport tower is not cheap. Although the elves have free spots, if we hold a large-scale event, we might not be able to afford it." With several dozen transport towers in the forest, if they could operate normally in the future, it would be normal for them to make several 100,000 source stones a month. If there were several tens of thousands of people teleporting back and forth, the consumption would be too large. Even a large power like the Eternal Forest would not be able to afford it. Chu Tian's heart skipped a beat and he said without revealing anything, "The elves are rich, would they care about this little bit of money?" City Lord Chu Tian's words are wrong. An elven city lord said, "The elves have never done business. Although we do have some source stones, it is the savings of our ancestors. If we keep spending it like this, we will run out of resources." Now that the Elven region and Miracle City are connected, the opportunity for us to cooperate even deeper has come. I want to work together with our strong points and conditions. The future will be very worth looking forward to. The Elven King said with a nod. The Vice City Lord Meng Qingwu has already discussed the details. The elves will be responsible for the regional communication and information technology, and the cities will open miracle shopping centers. Even if the elves don't go out, they can still buy things from all over the continent. Even if they don't need to travel, they can sell their specialties to all parts of the continent. It won't destroy the elves' ancestral teachings, and it will allow the elves to prosper. Augusta did not directly oppose this. This was the Elven Council's bottom line. No wonder the Elven Council did not stop the Elven King. The young miss already discussed the details of the cooperation? Did she really have 3 heads and 6 arms? Chu Tian's heart slightly skipped a beat and he suddenly had an idea. Actually, I have another idea and suggestion. I think it will be very beneficial to the development of the elves. The Elven King knew that the humans had many ideas, but since Chu Tian said this, of course he had to listen. What is it? Chu Tian carefully explained his thoughts to him. The Elven King's eyes lit up and he discussed it with the surrounding Elven City Lords. The Elven City Lords all nodded, like they were all in favor of this plan. There were even some whose faces turned red as they paid their respects to Chu Tian. After all, Miracle Commerce had helped the elves a lot on this matter. Vivian was filled with joy. She had specially invited Chu Tian here to let Chu Tian have a good relationship with the elves. She never thought that this kind of opportunity would allow the elves to discuss such an important matter. In the future, the elves and Miracle City's cooperation would become even closer. Chu Tian saw the elves happily accept this proposal and he was very satisfied. This was because Chu Tian understood that although this plan seemed like Miracle City would suffer a loss, it was actually a win-win situation. Even Miracle City's biggest problem would be solved by over half because of this. The next morning, Vice City Lord, did you hear? The elves have just announced a large matter with that fellow city lord. Dolores suddenly rushed over. Meng Qingwu was busy with official business, so she slightly knit her brows when she heard this. She knew that Dolores was not a person who made a fuss over nothing, so it was definitely something big for her to be this excited. Why did Chu Tian run over to the elves? What did he do this time? Dolores slightly swallowed her saliva. The elves have announced the establishment of the forest's second bank and the continent's second bank, the Elven Bank. Meng Qingwu's eyes popped out. The elves were opening a bank? Was there a mistake? Meng Qingwu quickly understood the situation and was shocked by the results. The matter of the elves opening a bank was true, and from the elves' benefits, this was completely understandable. This was because the elves had already connected all the transportation and logistics systems. The Miracle Shopping Center would soon be built and the communication and information platforms would soon be completed. Whether it was selling resources, building manufacturing, selling specialties, or developing technology, as well as movies and entertainment, the elves would definitely have a wave of entrepreneurship. The elves announcing the establishment of a bank was to prepare for this. The Eternal Forest and the large forest cities would all invest their money into the established bank and give it to the elves as loans. Wouldn't this promote the development of the elves? Of course, this bank model was good, but it wasn't something they could do just because they wanted to. Chu Tian played a key role in this. He first announced that he would sell 10 space warehouses to the elves, allowing the elves to use them as a space treasury for the bank. Other than that, he announced that he would sell 10 smart brains to the elves, allowing the elves to create a sophisticated and intelligent bank management platform. In other words, Miracle Commerce would fully support the establishment of the Elven Bank in terms of technology. But why was this? Once the Elven Bank appeared, wouldn't most of Miracle Banking's limelight be stolen? After all, the elves had a large influence in the forest. Even if they didn't mention the influence of the elves themselves, just the elven cities alone were enough to create a large business system. The elves had absolute trust in the eternal forest and the Elven King, therefore they were 100% assured in storing their source stones. The other races in the forest also had faith in the elves. In the future, the Elven Bank would expand even faster than Miracle Banking, so what was Miracle City planning? Chapter 1029. The Divine Sense realm was split into many different levels. Hyperfocus was just a high degree of control. The Heart's Eye had the ability to observe with Divine Sense. The Heart's Lamp had the ability to interfere, and when one reached the Vision Domain realm, they would have the symbolic ability, Body Possession. Body Possession was not completely a spiritual control. It could also imbue one's own characteristics and abilities into the target with Divine Sense. Chu Tian had just used the Vision Domain realm's ability to send the Netherworld's power into Nangong Yun's body. Because of this, Nangong Yun's strength increased and she had a part of Chu Tian's abilities and cultivation technique. This was the power of the Vision Domain realm. In the strong warring kingdoms of the continent, it was easy to find spirit transformation cultivators, but it was hard to find a Vision Domain Divine Sense person. Even a strong warring kingdom might not have a single one. Therefore, even on the continent, being able to cultivate Divine Sense to this kind of realm was an extremely rare existence. Reaching the Vision Domain realm with a cultivation in the peak third true spirit layer, this could be considered a shocking feat. Heavenly Sword Sect's people, open your eyes and look. This is the consecrator your sect master found. Nangong Yun revealed the identity of the mysterious consecrator, and the Heavenly Sword Sect's disciples were stunned. Their morale naturally fell, and under the combined attack of the 5 great sects, the Heavenly Sword Sect finally gave up resisting. The Heavenly Sword Sect's people all threw down their swords and surrendered. The sect was completely occupied. Nangong Yun followed Chu Tian's instructions and brought all the surrendered elders of the Heavenly Sword Sect in front of Chu Tian. Boss, I've brought them to you. Do you have any orders? All right, it's been hard on you. Chu Tian's eyes swept over these people and he didn't waste words. I want something from the Heavenly Sword Sect. As long as you obediently give it to me, I can guarantee that I won't make it hard for you and will instead guarantee that you won't have to worry about anything in the future. The Heavenly Sword Sect was already finished. What couldn't this fellow get if he wanted it? A Heavenly Sword Sect elder quickly asked, I wonder what the City Lord wants? The Heavenly Sword Sect has a long history of sword cultivation. There are several dozen first-rate inherited sword arts on the continent. We are willing to hand over the Heavenly Sword Sect's cultivation technique, as long as the City Lord is willing to let us go. Chu Tian's voice changed. I haven't finished yet. Actually, these sword arts are nothing. I am only very interested in your Heavenly Sword Sect's small phaseless sword. What? Small phaseless sword. This. The Heavenly Sword Sect elders looked at each other in blank dismay. Nangong Yun's eyebrows jumped up. It is your honor that my boss is interested. Since the boss has personally said it, why haven't you taken out that sword yet? An elder said with a bitter smile, This? It's not that we don't want to take it out, but the small phaseless sword is an ultimate sword art created by the Heavenly Sword Sect's founder in the Sword Tomb for 30 years. It is the Heavenly Sword Sect's most important cultivation technique, and only the sect master has the qualifications to use it. We don't even know where the sword art is hidden. Bullshit. Nangong Yun angrily said, If you dare lie to us, I'll make you die miserably. Spare us. The elders all begged for mercy. We really don't know. Chu Tian knit his sword-like brows. It was rare to find an interesting cultivation technique. Were they going to miss it like this? Boss, you don't need to worry. Nangong Yun said to Chu Tian, "This cultivation technique must be in the Heavenly Sword sect. I'll bring tens of thousands of people to dig through the Heavenly Sword Mountain. I don't believe we can't find it." "There's no need to be so troublesome." Chu Tian said to the elders, "Where is the sword tomb that your sect's founder created? Bring me there to see it." This. Nangong Yun picked him up. "I told you to hand over the cultivation technique and you're already hesitating. Now I want you to bring us to see some broken tomb and you're still so hesitant. I think you fellows are sincerely not cooperating, you're simply asking for a beating. How about I help you loosen your bones?" "No, it's a misunderstanding. The sword tomb is not a secret place, but the sword tomb has already been searched. The small phaseless sword art cannot be hidden in that kind of place." "Is that so?" Nangong Yun looked at Chu Tian. "Then what do we do?" Chu Tian calmly stood up. "Since the Heavenly Sword sect's founder could comprehend the small phaseless sword in the sword tomb, why can't I? Bring me to the sword tomb to see." This brat really didn't know the immensity of heaven and earth. When the Heavenly Sword sect's founder lived, the great Zhou country hadn't appeared yet. This founder was called the Phaseless Sword Saint. Actually, before he created the small phaseless sword, he was already a super expert that shook the continent. Even so, the Phaseless Sword Saint used an entire 30 years. How old was this young man? Did he have 30-50 years to comprehend it? Nangong Yun and the others didn't care. How could these trivial mountain kings compare to Chu Tian? Since Chu Tian's debut, which miracle had been created that was inferior to this sword art? Little? Close? Punishment? The Heavenly Sword sect's elder had no choice but to open the sword tomb door. The Heavenly Sword Mountain sword tomb was an ancient ruin that was actually hidden in the belly of the Heavenly Sword Mountain. Its size was not inferior to an underground palace, and there were millions of treasured swords inside, with each one being a rare treasure. This also showed how strong the ancient sword cultivator's inheritance was. At the very least, it wouldn't lose to the ancient sect that created the 10,000 corpse ancient tomb in the Yin Corpse Valley. Wow, there really are a lot of treasured swords. Nangong Yun and Meng Yinging followed Chu Tian into the sword tomb. The sword tomb was very large, but the structure wasn't complicated. There were millions of treasured swords inserted into the ground, forming an 8 trigrams array. It seemed like a strong and ancient sword array, but it had been too long and most of the swords in the sword tomb had decayed, so it didn't have the aura of the past. Chu Tian walked across the bridge of the sword tomb. There were many long bridges like this in the sword tomb, with all kinds of swords inserted into the left and right. There was a dense forest of swords at the bottom of the bridge. The large ones were over 10 meters long and the small ones were only 1 or 2 feet long. There were all kinds of them and they were very rich. It could be called an exhibition of treasured swords. This is the Heavenly Sword sect's sword tomb. A Heavenly Sword sect disciple said in a trembling voice, "Almost all of our Heavenly Sword sect's cultivation techniques and treasured weapons were excavated from the sword tomb. After all these years, the sword tomb has already been excavated, so it's hard to find anything valuable here." Nangong Yun looked at Chu Tian and said, "Boss, you wouldn't really want to go into closed-door cultivation here, right?" Closed-door cultivation? Of course not. Chu Tian wouldn't do this kind of thing. Chu Tian had personally experienced the might of the small phaseless sword, so he knew that this sword art was not something the Heavenly Sword sect could create. Even if the founder was strong, he was still limited by the era and knowledge. Not to mention 30 years, even if he was given 100 years, he still wouldn't be able to create this kind of cultivation technique. "You guys move a bit." Chu Tian closed his eyes and released his divine sense, instantly covering the entire sword tomb. Each sword trembled and a portion of the swords let out a clear ringing sound. All of these swords were soul-contracting weapons that could only be encountered. Because they could sense Chu Tian's power, they took the initiative to acknowledge Chu Tian. As long as Chu Tian needed it, he could take any sword here. But Chu Tian wasn't looking for a weapon, so he wasn't interested in these swords at all. I got it." Chu Tian leapt into the air and jumped down from the sword bridge. His feet stepped on the densely packed sword hilts and he finally landed in the center area, in front of a giant broken sword that was hung by chains. The others chased after him, looking at Chu Tian with faces full of surprise. Meng Yingying asked, "What's so strange about this broken sword?" This was an incomparably large broken sword with countless chains running through it. It stood straight in the center and the sword's body was already rusted. This kind of broken sword was everywhere in the sword tomb. This one didn't seem to be much different. "This is it." Chu Tian walked in front of the giant broken sword and placed his hand on it. When he poured his divine sense into it, the giant broken sword shook a few times, but there was no reaction. "That's not right," Meng Yingying said with a strange expression. "It's just a broken sword. Did you make a mistake?" Chu Tian would not make a mistake. There had to be something else in this broken sword, but how could he activate it? Nangong Yun said, "Even if there is something different about this sword, it has been in the sword tomb for so many years. Countless heavenly sword sect disciples, elders, and even the sect leader have observed it, but no one has been able to solve its secret. Just based on this point, it is not easy to solve." That's right. If it was easy to solve its secret, would it have been kept until today? Chu Tian pondered for a bit and then suddenly released his source spirit. The jet-black demon god sword flew into the air and a destructive sword chi instantly covered the giant broken sword. The broken sword began to tremble even more violently. Suddenly, a few pieces of rust fell off. Meng Yingying's eyes lit up as she said, "There's a reaction." The rust on the broken sword continued to fall off and the thing hidden inside was revealed. It was a snow-white jade that looked like it was made of congealed fat. The surface was covered in dense and profound characters. It really was like this. Actually, it wasn't hard to solve the secret, as long as one had a strong enough sword source spirit. There weren't many people in the history of the Heavenly Sword sect that had this kind of source spirit. Perhaps the founder, the Phaseless Sword Saint, was one of them. Meng Yingying came over to look. She had learned quite a few characters over the past year, but when she saw the characters in front of her, she felt dizzy. She couldn't recognize a single character. What kind of characters are these? I've never seen them before. This is a high-level character of the ancient heaven race. Even I can only understand a part of it. Chu Tian carefully looked at it and said, "This should be a sword art cultivation technique. It's most likely the phaseless sword." It seems like the Heavenly Sword sect's founder creating this small phaseless sword is pure nonsense. Nangong Yun snorted. He clearly plagiarized it, but he said it was his own creation. He really doesn't care about face. You can't say it like that. He spent 30 years deciphering these characters. The essence of this sword art is a space-attributed sword art. However, a sword cultivator with a space attribute is very rare, so he simplified the sword art. Using the original version as the foundation, he created the small phaseless sword. Actually, the phaseless sword is much higher level than the small phaseless sword. Wouldn't the cultivation technique Chu Tian found be the original version? The characters are disappearing. Quickly record it down and let the young miss decipher it. Meng Yingying quickly took out her cell phone and took a few pictures. She couldn't find the so-called small phaseless sword, but she found the complete version of the phaseless sword. Once this sword art was completed, a person's battle strength would reach an unimaginable level. Other than the phaseless sword's jade disc, Chu Tian also took out the Heavenly Sword sect's high-level martial arts and took them all away. After all, the Heavenly Sword sect's sword arts were passed down from ancient times and had been refined by generations of geniuses, so there were still many good things to learn. Chapter 1030. The Elven Bank attracted a large amount of attention. The elves in the Forest of Chaos had already multiplied for tens of thousands of years. They were one of the oldest races in the area. Although the elves had been shrinking in the last 1 to 2,000 years, they were still the most influential race. Even if the Dragon Lord, the Titan behemoths, dominated an area and their influence wasn't weaker than the elves, they were far from being able to control a group. Once the elves obtained Miracle City's technology, they would be the most suitable and qualified power to open a bank. It was because of this. Once the Elven Bank was opened, would there still be a matter of Miracle Bank? The elves had over 10 forest towns and several large forests under their control. Their territory would far surpass Miracle Bank, and they would instantly become the #1 bank in the forest. This kind of large cake, how could Miracle City be willing to give it away like this? Meng Qingwu was not in a rush to give an opinion. She understood Chu Tian's personality very well. Chu Tian's thoughts were always jumping around, but he would never suffer a loss. Chu Tian must have his reasons for doing this, so what was he thinking? Meng Qingwu suddenly trembled. She seemed to have guessed Chu Tian's thoughts. Dolores, don't be anxious. This matter might not be a bad thing for us. Let's see the situation first. Dolores was also stunned seeing that Meng Qingwu didn't have much of a reaction. This fox person was very good at business, but she had grown up in a tribe in the Forest of Chaos for a long time, so her experience and knowledge couldn't compare to Meng Qingwu, who had been in charge of miracle commerce for over a year. When Meng Qingwu didn't show the expected shock, she couldn't help feeling a bit suspicious. On the other side, Vivian was in high spirits. The Elven Bank was prepared to be established in the Eternal Forest, and the Elven King would be the chairman. The various Elven City's city lords and her who held the position of Miracle City's vice city lord would all become the vice chairman of the Elven Bank. This momentum was something that had never been seen before. The elves' influence and reputation were among the best in the Forest of Chaos. With the elves' strong support, it was only a matter of time before they became the #1 bank in the Forest of Chaos. Vivian didn't have a very good business mind, but she knew how important it was to control the entire forest's capital. The elves of the Forest of Chaos would have a lot more influence than right now. The elves of the Forest of Chaos could even become a large financial group that could influence the continent. The day the elves became rich was right in front of them. Wasn't this what Vivian had been looking forward to? But Vivian was a bit embarrassed. Big brother Chu Tian supporting the elves like this, wouldn't Miracle City's benefits be greatly harmed? Miracle City has its own technology to establish a bank, so as long as Miracle City has enough time, miracle banks will cover the entire forest sooner or later. Vivian was an elf. Of course she wanted the elves to be better. But Vivian was also a member of Miracle Commerce and was Miracle City's vice city lord. She was very loyal to Chu Tian and Miracle Commerce, so naturally she couldn't bear to destroy Miracle City's benefits for the elves. Chu Tian pretended to be carefree as he said, "For our Princess Vivian, what does it matter if Miracle City suffers this little loss? You can be assured I'll take care of this matter for you. I'll make you a great hero of the elves, a great person that will lead the elves to become rich." Vivian was very flattered and flustered. This? How can this be? We can't let down the company. I appreciate Big Brother Chu Tian's good intentions, but how about I talk to my royal father and we can discuss this matter later? Otherwise, I really don't know how to explain this to elder sister Qingwu. Vivian, don't listen to this fellow's nonsense. Meng Yingying couldn't stand it anymore and immediately pulled Vivian to the side. You've been with us for this long, don't you understand this fellow? I don't believe that this fellow who won't wake up without benefits will suffer a loss, so don't worry about it. Chu Tian gave a few loud laughs. Miracle City doesn't have a dictatorship, so we don't have this ability. Sometimes when we share some benefits, we can obtain even more. Just wait and see. Vivian didn't really understand. Chu Tian wasn't a person looking for a loss. Vivian was filled with gratitude and admiration for Chu Tian at the same time. When the news was sent to the elven cities and elven forests, it immediately excited countless elves. This was because the elves had been stagnant for too long, so opening a bank for the entire race was an epic-making feat. The Elven Council had some objections, but the Elven King and the Elven City Lords fully supported it. The Elven citizens had voted for it with over 90% of their votes, so the Elven Council couldn't go against the citizens. Not to mention that the elves didn't leave the forest, which was in accordance with the law. The plan was being prepared like a raging fire. This bank couldn't be opened without Miracle City's technical support because this was a very important matter, so the high-level members of Miracle City had to discuss the details of the cooperation. Chu Tian only proposed a plan. The ones truly responsible for the negotiations were the Vice City Lord Meng Qinggu and the Finance Minister Dolores. The two of them were the City Lords and Vice City Lords of Miracle Bank, so they could represent the company and Miracle City, as well as Miracle Bank. The top-secret meeting lasted for 3 days. Finally, Miracle City and the Eternal Forest made a joint announcement. The elves would officially open the Elven Bank and Miracle City would support the elves with all their technology. Other than that, the two sides would exchange shares. The Eternal Forest would hold 10% of Miracle Bank's shares and Miracle City would hold 10% of the Elven Bank's shares. The details of the cooperation between the two sides were kept secret, but the two banks would exchange shares. This would undoubtedly send the message that the Elven Bank was not a competition with Miracle Bank, but rather a cooperation. Miracle City and the Eternal Forest would become even closer because of this. Dolores' attitude changed 180 degrees. She was confused and even angry at first, but she suddenly became enthusiastic. Under Dolores' urging, the elves changed their procrastinating style and immediately began the bank ceremony in the Eternal Forest. Because the Elven territory was already covered, there were various broadcast channels and videos, so the elves were paying close attention to this matter. Could they not pay attention to this? This was a large matter that shook the elves. At the same time, it was a large matter that shook the forest. Meng Qingwu had people record the entire process because perhaps this would become valuable information for future generations. This allowed many elves that couldn't come to the Eternal Forest to watch the ceremony to watch it through the image transfer mirrors. It was a live broadcast that was sent over. The various city lords all gave their speeches. The Elven Council also recognized the legitimacy of this matter. Finally, the Elven King personally announced the establishment of the bank. In that instant, the elves all hugged each other and threw their hats in celebration. The Elven Bank was announced by the Eternal Forest and several Elven towns also participated. The model was the same as Miracle Bank, first taking in deposits with interest and then lending them out at a higher interest rate. Although the interest rate was the main income, it wasn't the only income. Other than that, there were income from services and intermediate businesses, like the fees for withdrawing money from other places, as well as future guarantees, rentals, pawns, and mortgages, as well as new income methods that hadn't been discovered yet. After the Elven Bank was established, before the bank was even built, the interest rate was announced. The Elven Bank's interest rate was much lower than Miracle Bank's. The interest rate for current deposits was only 2% a year and the interest rate for monthly deposits was only 3%. Half a year, 1 year, and even higher terms were all less than half of Miracle Bank's. Although it was like this, it was still high enough. Before the Elven Bank was established, the first deposit had already been made. This was directly invested by the Elven officials. The Eternal Forest directly deposited 500,000 source stones and the other Elven cities deposited several hundred to 200,000. In other words, the bank had just been established and it had already taken in over 2 million source stones. This was just the deposit from the Elven officials. Miracle Commerce had a close cooperation with the elves. After the Elven Bank was established, they could open a bank card and directly spend money in the Miracle Shopping Center and the various businesses of the company. This was very convenient for their lives and it was also convenient to take care of their assets. The elves were a very united race. The elves had absolute trust in the Eternal Forest and the Elven King. The Elven Bank was a large change for the elves. Therefore the elves would support it without any hesitation. Not to mention they wouldn't suffer a loss, so why wouldn't they save money? Would the Elven Bank have less deposits at that time? The elves in the Forest of Chaos were over 20 million. The elves had a guarantee of credibility. The elves had a guarantee of strength. The Elven Bank had several million deposits when it was established and it would wildly grow in the future. Moreover, with the Eternal Forest and the large Elven cities as guarantees, it was impossible for the elves to swindle people. Would the large forest races worry that the elves would cheat them of their assets? The tribes in the forest would definitely come to the Elven Bank to save money. No matter how strong Miracle City was, it was still a bit weak. How could it compare to the elves? So as long as the Elven Bank developed smoothly, it could suck away most of the source stones in the Forest of Chaos. But for a bank to grow healthily, it couldn't just rely on deposits. If the bank had large deposits and couldn't find large amounts of loans, the deposits would become a burden. The income and expenditure would not form a virtuous cycle, and the interest on the deposits would cause the bank to lose money. Then there was a problem. Where could the elves find all these projects? The elves had just begun their internal reforms, so how could the elves apply for loans that quickly? Not to mention that with the Elven Bank's absorption speed, the elves alone couldn't use it all. Then what should they do? They couldn't just let the large amount of reserves keep losing interest in the bank. The Elven Bank's best method was to take the large amount of source stones and transfer them to Miracle Bank with a certain amount of interest. This method not only avoided the Elven Bank's risks, Miracle Bank's interest rate was higher than the Elven Bank's, so the Elven Bank could earn quite a bit. Miracle Bank's situation was the opposite of the Elven Bank. The elves had enough funds but lacked projects. Miracle Commerce had high-quality projects but lacked funds. The elves had a large enough reputation and influence, but Miracle Commerce didn't have enough strength and was developing slowly. Now with this method, wouldn't they be able to make up for each other's weaknesses and gain benefits together? After the high-level members of Miracle Commerce understood this, they finally knew Chu Tian's goal. After going around for half a day, he was still pulling funds from Miracle City. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.